Chapter 221. Ah, I almost forgot. After the Gagon herd left, I emerged from the burrow and checked the text box. During the battle with them, the predation effect had triggered. Normally, when I don't use the mark of formidable foe, the chances of obtaining a genetic essence are very low, but this time I got lucky. And it wasn't just any Galagon's essence, it was from a white Galagon, not a green one. When I opened the text box again, there were only 10 seconds left to make a choice. Startled, I quickly selected the trait acquisition. You have acquired the trait Galagon's horns from the white Galagon. The Galagon's horns trait has been applied. Phew, that was close. As the trait was applied, the horns on my head began to mutate. The 6 horns grew significantly larger than before. While my head carapace remained the same, the enlarged horns made my head feel noticeably heavier. FUinvade.com. There were also some detailed changes beyond just size. For one, thin scales sprouted in reverse across the surface of all the horns. These scales had a white tint, making it look as if the black horns were cracked with white fissures. Moreover, 2 of the 6 horns had been broken before the mutation, and this was reflected in the change. Originally, there were 2 main types of horns on my head, a pair twisted into spirals, pointing forward, and 4 spike-like horns protruding sharply, aligned along my head carapace. Due to Od-grat's breath attack, the left spiral horn and the last of the 4 aligned horns had been damaged. They were in the process of regenerating, but with the mutation applied, their size and shape became uneven. The right horn was thick and robust, while the left one had jagged scales sticking out like saw blades. The same went for the 4 aligned horns. It was an unexpected change, but it didn't seem to hinder their use as weapons. I reached out and touched my now even more grotesque horns. Galagon's horns, huh? The psychic trait associated with the Galagon's horns is very straightforward. It completely negates the effects of psychic power techniques. For example, take reflection, which often annoyed me. Even if an enemy uses reflection to protect themselves, my horns can pierce through it. The horns penetrate the reflection barrier without resistance. Not just reflection, any other psychic power shield technique is also nullified. The nullification is limited to the horns. So, if my head carapace touches reflection, my whole head will be repelled. However, the horns are so large that it's not much of an issue when fighting regular cultists. Each horn easily exceeds 1 meter in length, which is only natural. This trait is extremely useful when fighting cultists. Unfortunately, when battling Galagons, there's little opportunity for these horns to shine. They don't use techniques like reflection. After confirming the changes to my horns, I also reviewed the messages that had appeared during the fight. Although I failed to kill Od-grat, this battle was still highly rewarding. I had successfully hunted 28 apex creatures by now. The apex condition only counts creatures I kill directly. Thanks to using Divine Spectre against the Galagon herd, I was able to meet the quota all at once. Just 2 more, and I'll have met the apex condition. Of course, that doesn't mean I'll stop hunting apex creatures afterward. I still need to obtain 10 unique traits in 6 different types. The Transcendence system has made acquiring unique traits somewhat easier, but it wasn't always like this. In the game, the traditional way to obtain unique traits was by hunting creatures that possessed them. This involved hunting high-tier apex creatures like the Black Galagon or killing players who had unique traits. The latter involved killing enemies who utilized genetic essences, such as outspacer players or genetically modified megacorp players. Naturally, even a Black Galagon is extremely difficult for a player to hunt alone. Creatures like the Red Galagon or Arcane Orca are far more formidable. And players who manage to obtain unique traits from hunting these creatures. Needless to say, each one of them is an elite, ranking among the top-tier players. Therefore, acquiring unique traits in the game was never easy. So much so that fewer than 10 people, including myself, managed to reach the adult stage of the Amorph. It was an incredibly tough barrier to overcome. In that sense, the Transcendence system is really groundbreaking. It hasn't even been a year since I arrived in this world, and I've already become this strong. As I was thinking that, my body suddenly floated into the air. Number 26 was using its psychic power to lift me, likely to move my injured body. ZZZZZ, you're okay now. No, I'll carry you since you're still hurt, big kin. The lower part of my tail hadn't fully regenerated yet. My wing arms were also in the process of bone regeneration. I might as well accept its help for now. After wobbling a bit, it seemed to get the hang of it and began to carry me properly. Soon after, PS-111 arrived, dragging the Gagon corpses along, and lifted them as well. Impressive. It showed no difficulty in lifting both me and the Gagon corpses with its psychic power. Truly befitting of a creature at the quasi-raid boss level. We carefully moved, carrying the Gagon corpses with us. There was no choice since Od-grat could send more pursuers at any time. I had already informed Adha and Nel-Jerma to meet at the nest. They were probably hiding somewhere in the forest, moving cautiously. About half a day after we started moving, the bones in my wings had nearly healed. So, I asked number 26 to let me down. Big baby, you're still hurt. You should rest when you're in pain. Zzz, I'm fine now. The pincers on my tail still had a long way to go before fully regenerating, but they didn't hinder me much from moving on the ground. I received a few Gagon corpses from number 26 and secured them tightly with my corrosive tentacles. Those tentacles seem very versatile and useful. Zzz, they are indeed. If we want to incorporate this into future upgrades, we'll need genetic information. Zzz, no. I flatly refused its request and continued to move with the Gagon corpses. Other than feeling a bit off balance due to my lower body, I seemed fine. After a brief rest, we resumed our journey toward the nest. Since I was now moving on my own, our pace had picked up considerably, though it was still slower than flying. After nearly an entire day of travel, we finally arrived near the nest I had built. As we approached the nest, Adha and Nel-Jerma, who had arrived earlier, emerged from the forest. Sub-Controller 2 confirmed as Little Baby. It's good to see you. Hello, Little Baby. Little Elder. Wounded Child. Safe. Relief. Adha greeted number 26 and PS 111 before noticing me, with my still regenerating tail, and looked startled. Great Elder. Injury. Severe. Are you alright? Zzz, I'll be fine soon. Rest. Necessary. Return. P. She stopped mid-thought, tilting her head in confusion. Her lavender eyes, like flowers on the snow, were fixed directly on my horns. Horns. Different. Feeling. Zzz, they broke because of Od-grat earlier. Broken. Different. Horns. Changed. Zzz, they changed because I consumed prey. One side is bigger. The other sharper. It's got a wild charm. I agree. Adha nodded, seemingly more pleased with the current appearance of my horns. Beside her, Nel-Jerma sent a telepathic wave of agreement as well. Do you like it when your appearance get bigger? Some species of males use elaborate tails or horns to attract mates. I don't understand what you mean. Enough with the chit-chat. Was everything okay at the nest? At my words, Adha suddenly remembered something, and her telepathic waves came flooding in. Great Elder. There's something important. Very, very, very important. We need to go to the nest right now. Zzz, what's going on? Nel-Jerma. Daughter of the meteor. Agrees. Blackkin. Must check. Seeing the usually composed Nel-Jerma act this way made me uneasy. Could something have gone wrong at the nest? Or perhaps something severe had happened to the Mother of the Sky. I quickly checked the parasite in her head. Seeing it intact, I realized that there wasn't a critical issue with her body. Then why? Zzz, is something wrong with the nest? Nest. No problem. Problem. Something else. Hurry. Confirm. Following the frantically urging Adha, I rushed to the nest. Between the trees in the distance, the entrance to a half-buried underground cave came into view. Beside the entrance was something massive, red and white. Just as the shape started to feel familiar, someone emerged from the cave. It was a beast with a thin, skeletal black body, massive antlers like those of a stag, and the head of a wild animal resembling a skull. This creature looked just like the malevolent Wendigo from Space Survival. And that Wendigo-like beast stared at me. From its empty eye sockets flickered an all-too-familiar amber flame. The Wendigo was, in fact, the Mother of the Sky disguised in the camouflage of the Huntress. She had successfully returned from observing Od-grat's nest. As soon as she saw me, she gestured urgently. There's no time. The injuries are too severe, it won't last much longer. You need to use the symbiotic biospores immediately. It wasn't until she spoke that I realized what the massive object at the cave's entrance was. Tattered wings, broken and twisted limbs, a torn tail, and shattered horns. This was the body of a brutally injured white Gagon. And I had encountered this Gagon before. Ham-ort. Ow. Adhay's mother, whom I thought was dead, was still alive. No, I have something more urgent to do first. This creature is a critical source of information. I can ask how she survived and why she's here later. I created symbiotic biospores and applied them to the dying body of Ham-ort. As I attached them, I touched her body, but there was no movement. I couldn't even feel it breathing, making it clear the creature was on the brink of death. It was likely left outside the nest because the numerous harmful elements present within my nest could be lethal to any creature without my permission. Due to the traits I possess, the nest emits many harmful substances to other organisms. While these aren't strong enough to threaten a white Gagon's life, Ham-ort was critically injured. If she were left inside, she would most certainly become nourishment for the nest. Now that I've attached them, let's move her inside. Once the symbiotic biospores were attached, Ham-ort could begin to benefit from their healing effects. I carefully lifted her body with my corrosive tentacles and gently placed her inside the nest. Perhaps it was due to the warmth rising from the nest, but I could sense a faint return of vitality in Ham-ort's body. Zzz, what happened? It's a long story. I'll explain it later, so you should rest as well. She was right, my tail. Injury hadn't fully healed yet either. Without another word, she left the cave. There's a lot to think about, but... As the tension eased upon returning to the nest, I began to feel the weight of fatigue. For now, let's rest. I closed my eyes above the warm mire. Chapter 222. I woke up in a hospital after clearing the space survival. My parents, who had separated after I became an adult, were there, hugging me and crying. They held me tightly, repeatedly murmuring how relieved they were that I was alive. To some, this might seem natural, but to me, it was an unfamiliar sight. While I was in the hospital, my parents would always blame each other. But was I also hoping for a harmonious family? For some reason, tears welled up in my eyes, and I cried together with them. Once they finally calmed down, my parents spoke to me. They wanted to start over. Although, legally, they were already strangers, they hoped to slowly rebuild their relationship. Seeing them, I realized an unwanted truth. I was dreaming. My parents loved me, but their relationship with each other was never good. Even if I were to die, there would be no chance of them reuniting. The moment I realized it was a dream, I opened my eyes, finding myself above a swamp. How long have I been asleep? I checked my lower body and tail. My tail, covered in mucus, was intact, with no wounds. Even the completely lost claw had fully recovered. Perhaps because I glimpsed reality through the dream, I suddenly wished I had this kind of healing ability when I was human. If I did, my parents wouldn't have divorced, and I wouldn't have lived a lonely life at home without a single close friend. Such pointless thoughts. It wasn't even time to evolve, so why did the past suddenly appear in my dream? It only left me feeling worse. I shook my head, trying to shake off both the mucus and the negative thoughts. The ripples I caused in the swamp were blocked by an object in front of me. It was Ham-ort, a white Gagon lying there with symbiotic biospores attached. Compared to when she first entered the nest, she had improved, but she still wasn't in a good state. While her broken legs and torn tail had healed, her wings hadn't even half regenerated. The horn on her head remained broken. Although we'd have to wait and see, it seemed there was a chance she might never fully recover. After checking on Ham-ort's condition, I stood up. As soon as I stepped out of the nest, the first thing I saw was an enormous, bright pink jellyfish. It was number 26, with its body maximally inflated. Through the gaps in its pink tentacles, I could see the heads of blue Galagons with blue scales. Just as it had done on the cruiser, it was holding the cold-sensitive blue Galagons tightly within itself. Little one, are you not in pain? Zzz, yes. I'm fine now. Seeing me, it raised one of its tentacles and waved it gently. Looking around, I noticed several pits that weren't there before I fell asleep. Branches were covering the tops of the pits. So they were hiding here. It seemed that when the cruiser left, the green Galagons and blue Galagons dug into the pits. We had also maintained body temperature in a similar way after the fight with Jason, so it was easy to figure out. Currently, instead of green Galagons, the pits were filled with the corpses of other creatures. The middle one brought them. You can eat too if you're hungry. The recovery of my body and the emptiness in my stomach were separate issues. Gladly following its suggestion, I pulled out one of the corpses from a pit. It was a snow banshee, grotesquely twisted, with its tongue ripped out. The cold emanating from it suggested it had been dead for quite some time. I had eaten this one a few times before. It tasted like a mix of jerky and dried squid. I put the meat in my mouth and chewed. Since it already tasted like a snack, the coldness didn't bother me much. While chewing on the cold snow banshee, I asked PS 111. ZZZZZ, where are the others? The flappy one went hunting. The middle one has something to say to the little one and the big flappy one. The big flappy one it referred to was Nelgerma. Number 26 gestured with one of its tentacles, pointing toward the forest. They went that way together. ZZZ, thank you. After quickly finishing off one of the corpses, I crawled in the direction it indicated. A forest emerged, where only black and white existed, like a chessboard. The ground was lightly covered in snow, with black trees growing above it. Dim light filtered through the densely intertwined branches. As I moved through the somber forest, I sensed the movements of 3 creatures, all varying in size. And then, the scent of blood. The scent of blood lingering low in the forest was quite familiar. It was the blood of a white Galagon. Adha must have fed on the Galagon's corpse. It seemed they had noticed me as well, as a small creature approached from the other side. Soon, the Mother of the Sky appeared between the trees, resembling a Wendigo. You're here. How's your body? ZZZZZZZZZZZZ, I'm fine. Thanks to you, I even managed to eat. I wasn't sure when you'd wake up, so I caught a lot, just in case. I'm glad to see you're okay. ZZZZZZZZZZZ, how did you manage to bring Ham-ort? Oh, but there's something I need to tell you first, about Adha. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, that reminds me, where is Adha? Is she fully grown now? She fell silent at my question, scratching her skull with a hand covered in black fur. It's hard to explain. You should see for yourself. She signaled me to follow with a slight beckon of her finger. For a moment, I wondered if something had gone wrong, but her demeanor suggested otherwise. Her reaction was more akin to the awkwardness of encountering something unexpected. Following her led us to a small clearing. Amidst scattered chunks of meat lay the white Galagon, Nelgerma. She noticed me and gave a slight nod. Behind her was a Galagon I had never seen before. Its length was around 4 to 5 meters, slightly larger than the Mother of the Sky when she transforms into a griffin. It had 6 horns on its head, long tendrils dangling from its mouth, and a serpentine body, all traits characteristic of a Galagon, except for one key difference. The wings. The small Galagon had 4 wings instead of 2. Galagon wings are usually located on the upper back, close to the chest. Like the others, this Galagon had large wings positioned on its upper back, near its front legs. Additionally, it had a smaller pair of wings attached near where the hind legs connected to the tail. In the game, there is only one type of Galagon with 4 wings. The most powerful of all Galagons, possessing strength comparable to the Vortex one, the Red Galagon. But the Red Galagon, as the name suggests, is covered in red scales. Unlike the psychic powers used by other Galagons, the Red Galagon wields a unique energy system known as Dragon Power, which makes its scales shimmer with a mystical, ruby-like brilliance. However, the Galagon standing behind Nelgerma was not red. Or more precisely, the red color was limited to its wings and horns. Its wings and horns glowed a vivid crimson, as if soaked in the blood of a Galagon. Yet, the rest of its body remained as white as the snow piled up in the clearing. A faint wave of thought emanated from the hybrid Galagon, whose red and white colors were intermingled. Elder I, failed I'm sorry. Hearing the apology from the half-grown Adha, I found myself at a loss for words. Disappointed. Honestly, it would be a lie to say I didn't feel that way. But that wasn't the reason. The real reason for my shock was that I couldn't understand the situation. A half-grown red Galagon. There wasn't any creature like this in the game, not even as an event. The Red Galagon was supposed to be a raid boss, a transcendent being that ruled over all Galagons. There should be no middle ground in its growth. Moreover, if the transition from white to red Galagon failed, it would naturally turn into a black Galagon, wouldn't it? I couldn't understand why Adha had become this hybrid, with traits of both white and red Galagons. My mind raced as I examined it again. No matter how I looked at her, she clearly had 4 wings. Although they drooped and hung above the snow, they were unmistakable. The wings, like the horns, were as red as blood. At that moment, Our eyes met. Her eyes, as beautiful as amethysts embedded in ice, were filled with an anxious light. I flinched, suddenly reminded of a similar gaze from long ago. Whenever my parents fought, I would hide in the closet. Every time, I would face the mirror attached to the closet door. The look in her eyes now was very much like someone's eyes reflected in that mirror back then. Calm down. Forcing myself to stay calm, I sent out a wave of thought. Zzz, what happened? I betrayed the elder's expectations. That's not true. I've never once thought you've let me down. It was the truth. Number 26, Adha, the mother of the sky, and PS 111, they all supported and sustained me. Not once had I ever felt disappointed in them. They always exceeded my expectations, and if I lacked in any area, they filled in the gaps. My emotions must have reached Adha, as she seemed to calm down a bit. Seeing that she was stable, I asked again. Corpse, after feeding during growth I felt something bad. Something bad. Growth completion I transform into the savior, the only ruler of my kind, the Red Queen. Yes, when you fully grow, you'll become the Red Queen of your kind. At my words, Adha shook her head, looking at me with sorrowful eyes. If that happens, I won't be able to stay by the elder's side anymore. What? The Red Queen must lead the prosperity of her kind, that is her sole mission. Little elder friend, sick child, we all must part ways. Hearing those words, something suddenly clicked in my mind. According to the lore, the Red Gagon was akin to a king among Galagons, a being that commanded all Galagons and reigned over them. And a king cannot exist without a kingdom. I struggled with this. I resented my kind Ham-ort, but I didn't want to see them die, so I thought of walking the path of the savior. As I quietly listened, Adha continued to send her thoughts to me. I chose to have both the savior and the elder. So, you gave up on becoming the Red Queen. In response, Adha sent a wave of denial. I cannot refuse the mission of the Red Queen, but I postponed it. Postponed. I'm still lacking. I have much to learn from the elder. Adha emerged from behind Nelgerma and approached me. Then, she respectfully bowed her head before me. I belong to the elder's group. Will the elder accept me? While I was sleeping, Adha had made an important decision. Though it was a decision made in a short time, I didn't think it was a rash one. Even if it was, I couldn't belittle her decision. It chose to forego the throne and stay by my side. Adha will be helpful to me. I wasn't sure how much stronger she had become, but she must have surpassed a regular white Galagon. With some luck, she might even be able to use the Red Galagon's unique dragon power. It would be a valuable asset not only in battles against Od-grat but also in future confrontations with other formidable foes. But it's not just that. If I had intended to let her leave, I wouldn't have come this far. Neither her nor number 26 would ever be given away to anyone else. I approached Adha, extended my arm, and patted her trembling head. You're always welcome here. It was uncertain whether she would eventually grow into a black or red Galagon. However, the nuance of postponing suggested that growth wasn't entirely impossible. So even if she doesn't become a red Galagon, she might still evolve into a black Galagon later on, though I don't know how. That's something to figure out later. Adha, now transformed, seemed like she would be useful in the fight against Od-grat. Even if she hadn't grown stronger, that was fine. The red horns and wings. The meaning behind those symbols would be better understood by Galagons than by me. It might even provoke internal strife if things go well. With that thought, I continued to pat Adha's head. Chapter 223. Adha's growth issue is resolved, but there are still some matters left to address. Originally, I had included the Red Galagon in the plan to conquer Od-grat, but that card is no longer playable. So, I need to revise the plan to fight without the Red Galagon. Despite her decision, it's hard to ignore the missed opportunity. The Red Galagon is, both by design and in actual gameplay, a top predator more terrifying than the Sea Demon or Black Galagon. There are very few creatures more powerful than the Red Dragons. However, I can't expect such strength from the current Adha. How much of the Red Galagon's power she can wield remains uncertain, but it will definitely be weaker than the original. I'll look into that later. For now, there are things I need to check first. I looked up at the Mother of the Sky. She had entered the nest herself to rescue Ham-ort. There are many things I need to ask her, like how she managed it, the size of the enemy forces, and their condition. I knew you used the Divine Spectre by looking at the sky. Already aware of what I wanted to ask, she slowly began to explain what happened in the dragon's nest. I debated whether I should retreat to support you, but since I can't fly, I thought rushing there wouldn't be helpful. It seemed better to attack the nest instead, so that's what I did. ZZ, makes sense. I thought it was worth a try since the white Galagons had all left the nest. Entering the nest wasn't difficult either. The black fur of the Wendigo hosts minute-sized bacteria. While these bacteria don't cause significant harm to other beings, they do induce temporary cognitive impairment. The Wendigo can intentionally spread the bacteria from its body. Those who inhale or become infected experience a temporary loss of direction, confusion of the senses, and other disorienting effects. A perfect ability for infiltration or surprise attacks. She must have known the Wendigo as well as I did, which is why she transformed into it. For reference, this ability can only be used when transformed into a Wendigo, as the bacteria are generated from its black fur by design. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ. How many Galagons were in the nest? freewebandevil.com. I couldn't check accurately since I tried to avoid them as much as possible, but just the green Galagons alone seemed to number over 50. ZZZZZZ, that's a lot. Considering the Galagons she didn't see, as well as the hatchlings, the Od-grat group likely has close to 100 members. As far as I know, a single Galagon group rarely exceeds 60 members. If their numbers grow beyond that, it becomes difficult for them to secure enough food. Now that I think about it, when I first fought the mutant screamer here, because of its self-destruction, a fire broke out in the forests, burning many creatures alive. The Galagons that flew in at that time were busy grabbing food rather than anything else. Galagons enjoy hunting live creatures. They do eat dead ones, but it's a lower priority. Yet, the Galagons were focused on carrying away the charred remains. ZZZZZZZ, they must be starving. I didn't check where the eggs were stored, but I think so. They have too many mouths to feed. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZz. It was a close call. But the situation was favorable. ZZZZZ, what do you mean? Ham-ort was also waiting for the right moment. As soon as I met her and briefly explained, she understood right away. Thanks to her cooperation, we were able to minimize the fighting. I was slightly surprised by her words. Indeed, it must be said that Adhay's mother has an extraordinary sense of judgment and courage. She explained that, thanks to the Rescue Target's act of cooperation, she didn't face much difficulty escaping the nest. It was due to the Wendigo's powerful special ability, Spirit of Ice. Creatures afflicted by the Spirit of Ice lose all reason due to an abnormal hunger. She used this to cause the green Galagons circling the nest to go berserk, diverting the enemy's attention. Moreover, the cliff, which she had anticipated would be the biggest obstacle in the escape, was easily overcome thanks to Ham-ort's suggestion. Originally, I planned to climb up and escape, but Ham-ort mentioned that there was water flowing below the cliff. So, we made our way out through there. As they jumped off the cliff, Ham-ort used her psychic power to slow their descent. As a result, both of them landed on the water without sustaining any serious injuries. If we had been even slightly slower, it would have been dangerous. Od-grat returned while we were escaping. It was a remarkable coincidence. If she had returned to the nest or if the rescue of Ham-ort had taken just a bit longer, they both would have been doomed. After escaping through the waterway, she returned to the nest. When I got back, everyone was hiding in the pits they dug in front of the nest. So, those were the pits I saw earlier. They almost attacked the Mother of the Sky when they saw her transformed into a Wendigo, but thanks to Ham-ort, a fight was avoided. After that, I went out for food hunting and scouting whenever I could. Just in case you brought a Galagon back with you. ZZZ, good job. As expected of a ranker, her situational judgment and actions were appropriate. When I praised her, the amber flames that flickered in her eye sockets swayed gently. Praise has become common from you recently, Amorph. ZZZ, should I take it back? I'm kidding. By the way, Ham-ort also mentioned something strange about Od-grat having a peculiar power. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, yes. He can predict danger. Predict danger. At my words, the Mother of the Sky scratched her black skull with her hand. Are you talking about foresight? It wasn't that great in the game. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, Not here. He can actually read the future. Understanding the implications of my words, she straightened her posture. She knew as well as I did how problematic it was for a top predator like the Black Gagon to have the ability to read the future. This won't be easy. How far into the future can he see? Less than 5 minutes before a life-threatening situation occurs. I couldn't say for sure how far ahead he could see, but it was certain that he could respond to life-threatening situations. Now that I think about it, Ham-ort mentioned fighting him. You said Ham-ort told you, right? I'll have to ask her when she wakes up. I'm not sure if Ham-ort knows. What? The ability she described wasn't the foresight one. It was something different. He has another ability. Her words caught me off guard. It's not a combat-related ability like foresight. Actually, it's debatable whether it's even an ability at all. What is it then? According to Ham-ort, he possesses a mineral that has the power to deceive his own kind. A mineral. As soon as she said that, something came to mind. A gemstone. Could it be? He was wearing a large ring with a refined gemstone set into his forepaw. Galagons are intelligent, but they have no concept of adorning themselves with equipment or clothing. So, I thought it was unusual when I saw his ring. Now that you mention it, he was wearing a ring with a gemstone. A gemstone ring. That must be it. Ham-ort said that he never separates himself from the mineral that holds this power. If Ham-ort's words are true, it explains why Od-grat, despite having an abnormal personality for a Galagon, could command so many of his kind. Never mind where that ring came from. Whatever it is, the fact that the ring is the key to his control is crucial information. What if he loses the ring during battle? His followers would be thrown into chaos. They're already starving, and their leader is using a suspicious method to control his own kind. If used wisely, this could be a fatal blow to Od-grat. I looked down at Adha, who was rubbing her head against the back of my hand. Seeing her gave me ideas on how to approach the battle against Od-grat. Good. I had gathered enough information from the Mother of the Sky. As I organized the information, I thought about what needed to be done next. There were 3 tasks remaining. Wait for Ham-ort to wake up, and then check Adha's abilities and activate my mimic scales. Both were related issues and could be dealt with at the same time. Let's head back to the nest. There's a lot to do. Right? Finished talking. Yes. At my response, she gently lifted her head from my hand. Perhaps due to the mixture of red Galagon traits, she looked somewhat different. Of course, her body had grown larger and the color of her horns and wings had changed, but there was something fundamentally different about her. Her thought waves have changed. Previously, her thought waves were sent in short bursts, filled with raw emotion. Now, they were much more refined, similar to how number 26 or Od-grat conveyed their thoughts. You've gotten better at communication. Is change bad? No, growth is a good thing. Her thought waves were simple, which sometimes made them difficult to understand. This was much easier for me. Though, I do feel a bit nostalgic. With that thought, I picked up the remaining Galagon corpse. As Adha, the Mother of the Sky, Nel Germa, and I returned to the nest, we saw the green Galagons that had gone hunting. They were clinging tightly to number 26's body, just like the blue Galagons had done before. The cold of this planet was something even Galagons found hard to withstand. Should I implant them with symbiotic biospores? Then, the Galagons noticed us and detached themselves from number 26. They approached us, lowering their wings and upper bodies close to the ground while bowing their heads. What's this? All of their horns were pointed toward one single being. It was Adha, who was perched on my back. This was the first time other Galagons had reacted this way to Adha. Although she hadn't fully become a red Galagon, it seemed that the other Galagons didn't see it that way. After bowing in unison, the Galagons raised themselves and brought out the corpses they had buried in the pit, placing them in front of me. Their actions resembled servants offering food to their master. No, in this case, it's more like subjects presenting a gift to their queen. Adha tilted her head in confusion, not understanding why they were doing this. I'm bull. No need to give food. You eat. Thank you. Only after she declined did the green Galagons begin to eat the food they had caught. While they ate, I attached symbiotic spores to their bodies. Then, I gave a portion of the remaining white Galagon remains to number 26. ZZZZZZZZ, eat up. We have work to do. What work? ZZZZZZZZZZ, I need both you and Adha. Got it. Big baby can count on me. She's always so encouraging, never failing to say something nice. Feeling grateful, I raised my winged arm and gently patted her. She shimmered with delight, glowing brightly. After sharing the Galagon corpse with number 26, I set out from the nest with the two of them. This should do. Stopping at a suitable clearing, I explained to Adha and number 26 what we would be doing here. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ. First, we'll test the new power Adha gained. We needed to see how much Galagon's power she could harness. The red Galagons use a new type of power called dragon power. Depending on how much she can wield it, our schedule might need some adjustments. To grant psychic resistance to my mimic scales, I need to be exposed to pure psychic power attacks. Developing resistance to dragon power wouldn't be useful right now. The resistance effect provided by the mimic scales only applies to one type of energy at a time. It takes several days for the immunity to reset, so we have to be careful not to waste time. Should I try it now? ZZZZZZ, yes. As much as you can. As I nodded, Adha's eyes sparkled with excitement. Then, a red aura began to emanate from her body. Chapter 224. Ham-ort was dreaming. The queen of pure white, the mate of the great Od-grat, and the traitor. She bore names of both praise and scorn, but it wasn't always like that. Before her eyes, she saw a familiar face as she opened her eyes. It was the black-scaled male she had met when she had just shed her white scales. His name was Od-grat, the one with impressively curved horns and intelligent eyes. When he first became the leader, he was a male beyond what one could imagine now. He cherished his kin and young hatchlings more than anyone, and when the group faced crises, he knew how to handle them wisely. That was why she admired him, not because he was the leader, but because she loved his wisdom, his strength, and his kindness. His pure face blurred for a moment, then became clear again. Now, his face was very different from before. The horns on his head and the smooth scales were the same, but there was one crucial difference. The eyes that were once full of intelligence were gone. Instead, there remained an inexplicable fury and infinite hatred. For what reason did this once kind being change so drastically? Was it the burden of leading the group, or was there another reason? The reason is unknown, but that is not the important part. What matters is that the great Od-grat she once loved has completely vanished from this world. The black-scaled leader commanded her. He ordered her to kill her daughter. As the group grew, more and more of their kind were unable to receive proper nutrition. Even the healthy hatchlings weakened with every change in the stars. In such circumstances, her daughter, who was born small, was nothing but a drain on resources. She knew that he wasn't wrong. Yet, she still wished for her daughter to live as long as she could. One day, her daughter might go out to hunt with her weak body and be hunted instead. Or she might lose in competition for food with others and starve to death. The world they lived in was harsh and cruel. She knew she couldn't change the world. But, she didn't want to kill her daughter just because she was deemed useless. So, she made up her mind. She would use the thieves who came to steal the eggs. The image of Od-grat in front of her faded away like mist. In its place, familiar darkness appeared. She flapped her wings in the infinite dark space she had always looked up at from her nest or hunting grounds. A small light appeared far off in the distance. It looked like the starlight that blessed her daughter when she was born, but in reality, it was a much smaller light. The light that carried the daughter of the meteor gradually shrank and soon disappeared. As the world plunged into darkness, she opened her eyes above the swamp. The red Galagon is one of the top 10 most dangerous predators. Despite being called a Galagon, it's so different that it could be considered another species entirely. In addition to the psychic powers used by ordinary Galagons, these creatures possess a unique power system known as dragon power. There are various types of dragon power techniques, but they share a common characteristic: when dragon power is activated, a red light emanates from the body. This was true even for Adha, a half-blooded red Galagon. The red light spread from her wings and horns, dyeing her body as if soaked in red ink. You're still immature. The stream of energy burning within her like fire was undoubtedly from dragon power, but it was far from the image in my memory. Unlike Adhay's fiery appearance, the red energy should have coated her scales and enveloped her entire body in a subtle, glowing aura. Dragon power techniques are all terrifying in their effects. That's why it must find a way to control that power, no matter what. 2. Strong. Art. To control. ZZZZZ, you can do it. Little one. Just do it like when you were flapping around. I'll try. Hearing my and number 26's words, Adha began to focus. Most of the energy streaming from her horns and wings receded, returning to its original place. The residual energy that couldn't be contained seeped into the red wave patterns along her body. Having successfully stabilized her power, a bright red glow flared up around her eyes. It looked as though she were wearing makeup made of blood. I did it. Though it's still unstable. It was clear that she was putting on a brave front, but I didn't point it out. Just being able to control that immense power to this extent in such a short time was impressive enough. ZZZZZZZZ, do you have any usable techniques? 1. Seems possible. ZZZZ, try using it. Without moving from her spot, she concentrated. Soon, a red light flowed from her four wings, dyeing her entire head and front legs a deep red. Wow. Amazing. The little ones all toughened up. Number 26, sensitive to energy and wavelengths, immediately recognized Adhay's state. The name of this technique is red armor. According to the lore, red Galagons focus their dragon power on specific body parts to protect vital areas, drastically increasing their hardness. As number 26 mentioned, it's a characteristic that makes the user tougher. Though it may seem like a rather simple ability for a boss creature, this is precisely the trait that makes red Galagons so difficult to kill. It's one of the best defensive techniques in space survival. The core feature of red armor is its invulnerability. No attack can break through it. Whether it's the Divine Spectre or the Cosmic Bolt from the Empire's battleship, no matter how powerful the weapon, any part of the body covered by red armor is impervious to damage. Since it's a dragon power technique, not even my psychic nullifying horn can bypass it. Therefore, the weak point of a red Galagon isn't its head or heart. The only way to harm it is by targeting areas not covered by red armor. The problem is that a real red Galagon can cover most of its body with red armor. Moreover, red Galagons can shift the areas covered by red armor at will. This means you're up against an enemy with incredible specs, and the only way to defeat it is by hitting its one weak spot, which constantly moves. It's a dizzyingly difficult task. It was really tough for me to take down a red Galagon too. I had to study other players' battles with it, analyze its behavior patterns, and figure out where it usually hit its weak spot before I could finally defeat it. The frustrating part was not getting the genetic essence even after all that trouble. I remember having to hunt it again after weeks of effort went down the drain. Anyway, Adha is still inexperienced, so she can only cover her head and front legs with red armor. As she gets more skilled, she'll be able to extend the range of the armor. Once that happens, I won't have to worry about her safety anymore. I was concerned because of her small size, but thankfully, it's all working out. It feels strange. ZZZZZZZZZZ, try ramming your head into a tree. I don't like pain. ZZZZZZZZZZZ, you won't feel a thing. After hearing my words, she hesitated but then walked over to a tree. She struck it hard with the horn on her head, and the tree toppled over effortlessly. Amazing. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ With her front legs now as tough as her head, it tapped the fallen tree and looked back at me. I don't know. But how? Does Big One? No. ZZZZZZZZZZ, I've seen it before. Not me. The power of the stars. Are there others like me? ZZZZZ, not anymore. It tilted her head in confusion, but there was nothing more I could say. I couldn't exactly tell it I saw it in a game. Will I have to tell them someday that I'm an outsider? I need to leave this world and return to the place I originally lived. In fact, that's what I'm moving toward even now. But as I get closer to that goal, the things that make me conflicted just keep increasing. Number 26, Adha, the Mother of the Sky, and even PS 111. What will happen to them if I leave? Will they manage on their own, or will they miss me? And what about the Mother of the Sky, who, like me, is a player. If I reach the ending, will she return to reality with me? Lost in thought, I was still when number 26 sent a wavelength my way. Big One knows everything, it's amazing. Agree. Big One is cool, strong, smart. Big One has many limbs and is really big. Horns, wings, all awesome. Starting with number 26, they all poured out their pure emotions. Instead of replying, I extended my winged arm to gently stroke them. It's a problem I can't answer right now. There's no need to decide today. But the time will inevitably come when I have to choose. To avoid regrets then, I'll need to keep thinking about it. ZZZZZZZZZZZZ, you are all precious gifts to me. Gift. Big One hungry. I understand. Big One's words mean we're important. Number 26, always showing an innocent demeanor, and Adha, flaunting her intelligence as she grows. Even in reality, I couldn't forge deep connections with others. As they said, for someone like me, sick in both body and heart, they are indeed precious. Why am I suddenly thinking like this? Getting sentimental isn't necessarily bad, but there's still much to be done. I withdrew my hands from them and sent the next instruction through wavelengths. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, Adha, you can release your power now. Acknowledged. Power released. When the dragon power dissipated, her body returned to its original state. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZz. Acknowledged. Big One. Are you itchy? Want me to scratch? I'd spoken too vaguely, and they didn't understand. So I explained my intention carefully. Big One. Does your species grow stronger the more they're attacked? ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ. Yes. It's a power gain through growth. Still can't understand. Since Adha would be the one attacking me, she seemed to have a hard time grasping the concept. Mimicry scales are an unfamiliar trait to Galagons. Moreover, for someone like Adha, who has spent her life avoiding attacks due to her fragile body, it must be even more baffling. Big One's words. Always good. So I'll follow them. ZZZ, thank you. After several more explanations, Adha finally understood what I was saying. She stepped back, increasing the distance between us. While Adha was preparing to attack, I took the time to explain to number 26. So I should do it like when I punish a bad flapper. ZZZZZZZZZZZ, just make sure the deflected energy doesn't hit Adha. Okay. Big One and Little One can both count on me. The reason I insisted on activating my mimicry scales in combat was because of a trait I possess, the psychic power reflection armor. This trait automatically reflects 30% of the damage I take from psychic power attacks. If Adha were as big and sturdy as a normal Galagon, she wouldn't be harmed by the reflected attack. Unfortunately, she was born with a body weaker than other Galagons. Her current defense is even lower than that of a typical green Galagon. In other words, she's like a flying glass cannon. Just taking 30% of the damage from her own breath attack could be fatal. That's why I need number 26. Number 26 is highly skilled at controlling psychic power. She can neutralize the reflected energy or redirect it elsewhere. Now that Adha has red armor, she'll be able to manage on her own eventually. But for now, Adha is still inexperienced in using dragon power, so she needs number 26's help. With that, we were all set. Adha, who had put some distance between us, sent me a telepathic message. I will attack now. Okay. Tell me. If it hurts, I'll stop. ZZZZZZZZZZZ, don't worry, just go all out. She nodded slightly. Soon, a vivid purple light emanated from the bundle of tentacles hanging from her mouth. The psychic power became so dense it could be touched and then solidified into a small energy bullet. The first shot was fired. The psychic breath flew through the air, followed by a second and third wave of energy bullets. Adha's unique psychic breath, not used by other Galagons, was now coming at me. The first hit landed on my head, spreading a strong shock across my entire exoskeleton. While I registered the pain, the subsequent psychic breaths continued to strike the same spot. But my pain wasn't the main concern. What mattered was where the reflected attack would go. Without my conscious control, the psychic power reflection armor activated, reflecting 30% of the energy from Adha's attack. Some of it flew back toward Adha, while other parts veered towards number 26. Number 26 caught every single bit of the energy without letting any escape. Its tentacles moved like a conductor leading an orchestra. The energy, which had been suspended in the air, gathered in one spot and then shot up into the sky. Perfect. Zzzzzzz, just like that. Maybe because we've fought together many times, we all performed seamlessly, even on the first try. We repeated the process several times. At one point, when Adha hesitated after seeing my battered exoskeleton, I reassured her, saying I would heal quickly and that this was good practice for fighting Od-grat. Whether my persuasion worked or she recognized the importance of training, Adha didn't hesitate to attack after that. After about 30 hits from her, I noticed changes in my exoskeleton and outer shell. The once rigid surface started to soften like jelly. Within seconds, tiny scales emerged from beneath the surface, covering my entire body. At the same time, a translucent text box appeared. Mimicry Scales Activation Target, Psychic Power. Duration, 3 days. Warning, Psychic Power Reflection Armor will be temporarily deactivated. As I read the text box, Adha's psychic breath struck again. The powerful energy shook my entire head, but all I felt was the sensation of being hit, with no accompanying pain. It worked. The mimicry scales were now fully activated. For the next 3 days, no Gagon, not even the black Gagon Od-grat, would be able to harm me. Chapter 225. The effect of the mimicry scales provides a high level of resistance against certain energies. Now that I've secured resistance against psychic power, Od-grat's breath attack shouldn't pose too much of a problem. It will be painful, but I can handle it. Od-grat's breath is overwhelmingly stronger than that of other Galagons. The chances of absorbing the shock completely are slim. However, it's not enough to threaten my life. There's no longer any need to keep dodging and running from his breath. The problem is with his danger-sensing ability. I've prepared methods to disperse his forces and withstand his attacks, but one issue remains. How do I outmaneuver an enemy that can foresee the future? I kept thinking as I returned to the nest with Adha and number 26. In space survival, there's no such thing as skills or traits that can read the future. It's an online VR game involving countless players, so that's only natural. The so-called future sight or prophecy only enhances evasion abilities or marks enemy movements on the minimap. So it wouldn't be wrong to say that Od-grat is the first incomprehensible enemy I've encountered in this world. No, wait. There is a clue. I have encountered a future sensing ability before, my predator's senses. Thanks to this trait, which is close to precognition, I've escaped danger multiple times. Without this trait, I wouldn't have made it this far. In my experience, the future range that the predator's sense shows me isn't very long. It's just a few minutes ahead, showing me events that are about to impact my body. The only exception is when I use the symbol of hunt. When in the hunting icon state, the scope of future sight expands. I first felt this when escaping from the hospital at T&C Special Trade Hub. The EU Knights were moving to surround the hospital, but sensing it in advance allowed me to escape safely. This is likely because the symbol of hunt amplifies the traits and effects of the abilities it holds. Considering that, Od-grat's ability is peculiar. His ability certainly involves foreseeing dangerous futures. However, the range is quite ambiguous. This is because it predicted that I would target the white Gagon on my hunt and came to attack. Yet, whenever I used the abyssal hue, he always sensed it and tried to evade it, even though he had never seen it before. That means it can see beyond immediate threats. In the long run, hunting white Galagons could pose a threat to him. After all, my ultimate goal was to kill him. This would explain why he didn't attack me immediately upon my arrival on this planet. Although I came here to hunt Galagons and apexes, my intent wasn't solely to kill Od-grat. Let's rethink this. Od-grat has already surpassed the boundaries of the game. I need to broaden my perspective. What if he can see multiple types of futures? For instance, like me, he might see specific futures only in certain states, while others are visible more generally. In summary, there are 2 types of futures he can see: immediate dangers and distant, threatening futures. Based on the information at hand, this assumption seems reasonable. And here lies the crucial part. Od-grat set a trap to kill me because I posed a threat to his life. As I got entangled in his schemes, I had to fight in an imperfect state, revealing most of my trump cards. However, he didn't foresee that he could die fighting me. In fact, he nearly died because of the abyssal hue and the divine specter. Taking this into account, a new hypothesis can be formed. The futures he sees have limits. First, let's consider the ability to detect long-term future threats. He likely only sees these during specific cycles or situations, not frequently in everyday circumstances. That's why he couldn't account for changes in the future that occur mid-course. The second ability is to detect imminent, short-term dangers. Since this is similar to my predator's sense, he probably has similar limitations. While it helps in dealing with a specific threat when it arises, it doesn't allow one to avoid the dangerous situation itself. Therefore, to kill him, I need to exploit the gap between these two types of future visions. If I act rashly, he will catch on. I have many cards to play: Ham-ort's escape, Adhay's growth, information about the ring he possesses, and the mimicry scales. But if I use them carelessly, he will detect my intentions in advance. If I make a mistake, he might escape. Od-grat is the only black Gagon on this planet. If I lose him here, I'll also lose one of the unique traits. I need to create a future that isn't unfavorable for him. As I pondered how to strike him, we arrived at the nest. At the entrance, I saw Mother of the Sky sitting, and beside her was a wounded white Gagon lying down. Ham-ort. Ad-ha sent out a telepathic wave. Sensing her, Ham-ort lifted her head to look at her daughter. The violet eyes of the mother, who had seen her daughter, were filled with confusion. Daughter of the meteor. Savior. Did you fail? Why? Why? I rejected the savior. Upon hearing Adhay's response, Ham-ort suddenly stood up. Mother of the Sky, who was beside her, also rose to her feet. Be careful. Your wounds haven't healed yet. Why? You made the wrong choice. Od-grat. Can't be stopped. Ham-ort seemed shocked that her daughter had refused to transform into a red Gagon. She, who had remained calm even in battle, now openly displayed her anger. Responding to Ham-ort's passionate telepathic waves, Ad-ha didn't back down and sent her own in return. I chose new kin. Past kin. Important, but this side is more important. Od-grat will kill all kin. Young kin. Adult kin. Worry. Unnecessary. Great elder. Small elder. Ugly friend. Sick child. All kin will fight together. Od-grat. Strong. Black kin. Victory. Impossible. Od-grat will kill black kin. Great elder is not weak. Don't insult. Ham-ort. Ham-ort. Calm down. Ham-ort seemed ready to leap at Ad-ha at any moment. If her wings and body were intact, and if Mother of the Sky hadn't restrained her, she probably would have. Disappointment. Disappointment. I am disappointed. Daughter of the meteor. You abandoned the blessing. You abandoned our kin's expectations. Disappointment. I'm more disappointed. Ham-ort. You abandoned me. For being weak. Denial. Never abandoned weak kin. Liar. Ham-ort. You're a liar. You abandoned me. For the savior. You forced the salvation of our kin. It's shameful. As their emotions escalated, their telepathic waves became increasingly primal. The mixture of Ham-ort's disappointment and anger with Adhay's sorrow and resentment made my monster's tendrils tingle. Number 26, who is sensitive to wave detection, also seemed affected as its body color turned a dark pink. I will step out. In the end, Ad-ha was the first to retreat. She kicked the ground with her hind legs and flew into the forest. What happened? PS 111, who had been tending to a blue Gagon infected with symbiotic spores inside the nest, walked out. The little one fought with the flappy mom. After analyzing the surrounding environmental factors, I see no evidence of a battle between the little one and Ham-ort. I don't understand what you're saying, friend. It's too complicated. While PS 111 and number 26 engaged in their unintentional banter, Ham-ort simply stared blankly in the direction where her daughter had disappeared. Her emotions, uncontrolled and raw, were spilling out. This forest is safe, but just in case, bring Ad-ha back, both of you, number 26 and PS 111. Okay. I'll protect the little one. Let's go, friend. Understood. Number 26 shrunk itself down and climbed onto PS 111's back. The sea demon and the mutant screamer then vanished into the forest. Only after they left did Ham-ort seem to regain her senses, dropping her head. The chaotic flood of emotions that had been emanating from her gradually subsided. Finally calming down, Ham-ort lifted her head and looked at me. You. Blackkin. ZZZ, yes. Daughter of the meteor. Talked. A lot about you. Said you taught her. It was true, so I nodded, and Ham-ort slightly bowed her head, bending her front legs. Ham-ort. Thanks you. For saving. And looking after the daughter of the meteor. Expressing her brief gratitude, she then straightened up. Her amethyst eyes reflected a complex mixture of emotions. But. Because of you. The daughter of the meteor. Abandoned the savior. Od-grat. Will kill. All our kin. ZZZZZZZZZZZZ, that won't happen. Because I will stop it before it comes to that. Ham-ort shook her head, denying my words. Od-grat. Lies. Deceives our kin. Deceived companions. And young kin. Our kin. Follow Od-grat's orders. Ham-ort. Black kin. Not strong enough. ZZZ, is that so? Black kin. Is strong. But. Od-grat. Has more. Having fought me before, she knew how strong I was. She must be trying to point out the numerical superiority of the enemy forces. And she wasn't wrong. If I had fought Od-grat when I faced her, I would have lost. Not anymore, though. However, unaware of this, Ham-ort seemed desperate to persuade me to avoid the fight. Her telepathic waves were filled with urgency. Od-grat. Is strong. I believe. You think? The daughter of the meteor is precious. If so, survival is more important. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, to save Adha, I must kill Od-grat. Blackkin. Won't you give up? ZZZZZZZZZZZZ, no, Od-grat will die by my hands. Ham-ort no longer sent any telepathic waves and simply stared into my eyes. I could sense her anxiety. However, my resolve was unshaken. I was determined to kill the black dragon that had wronged me, no matter the cost. Understood. Ham-ort. Will trust the black kin. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, good. Tell me about the situation when you fought it. Ask whatever you want. After staring at me for a long time, Ham-ort finally gave up on convincing me otherwise. I began to ask the questions that had been on my mind, one by one. Beyond the frozen plains lies a vast canyon. As one approaches this deep canyon, so vast it is better measured in hundreds of meters, or even kilometers, a strange sound can be heard. It resembles the agonized screams of suffering animals, but in reality, it is the sound of the wind passing through the massive ice chasms. Although a natural phenomenon, the eerie noise is so unsettling that most living creatures avoid the canyon altogether. The only entity that freely enters this territory is the Beast King, who rules the area. However, even the Beast King has not been seen recently. Whether it is in seclusion or has left the canyon is unknown. In its place, strange, alien entities have occasionally ventured into the canyon. These beings seem unaware that this territory belongs to the Beast King, indiscriminately slaughtering any nearby creatures. Whether plant or animal, anything that moved was killed. As a result, this canyon, already sparsely populated, has become a completely dead zone. Today, once again, the grotesque entities entered the canyon, dragging along chunks of meat after their latest slaughter. Deep within the canyon, where there should only be thick darkness, red lights began to flicker as they descended. Finally, the creatures reached what could be considered the canyon floor. Hanging precariously, they threw the chunks of meat down. In response, an enormous red light, far larger than before, opened its eyes and devoured the meat in an instant. Mission to scout the surrounding area and secure energy sources, completed. Current inability to assess the threat within the supervolcano. Investigation ongoing. Traces of humanoid activity detected on this planet. Believed to be humans affiliated with Megacorp, who have come to investigate the supervolcano. Unusual atmospheric phenomena occurred on this planet 2 days ago. Comparative analysis with accumulated meteorological data suggests this anomaly resulted from a battle between native life forms. While monitoring the nests of native creatures, discovered. The beings, or rather, the mutant screamers, continued their mechanical reports. Normally, after their regular reports, they would exchange the information they had gathered amongst themselves, but today was different. The red light that had consumed the chunks of meat flickered again. Pira 11. Orders. As the red light murmured quietly, all of them fell silent. The entity responsible for the meteorological anomaly matches 82% of the profile for Special Target A, according to the Starlink database. The red light, no, the android, which was undergoing repairs due to significant damage, was one of the top members of the Star Union Mechanical Council, known as Pura 11. Pura 11. Highest priority command issued. Eliminate Special Target A. All remaining 189 S model units and 20 PS model units in the canyon are to engage. Order confirmed. Order. At Pura 11's command, countless dormant red lights opened their eyes. The chilling sound of the wind in the canyon was now accompanied by an even more ominous noise. Chapter 226. The conversation with Ham-ort continued for quite a while. It was because she knew more about Od-grat than expected. It's natural since she was his mate for so long. Anyway, the information I got from her could be summarized into 2 key points. A ring that manipulates emotions and foresight. She mentioned that Od-grat carries a mysterious ring with him. She couldn't recall exactly when he obtained it, but it was certain that he acquired it after becoming the leader. It was also because of that ring that Ham-ort was slow to realize Od-grat was changing in strange ways. Galagons can't lie. Due to their nature of communicating through emotional waves, the concept of lying doesn't exist for them. While they can pass on incorrect information due to misunderstanding or ignorance, they cannot lie intentionally. Therefore, Galagons inherently trust their fellow clan members. Ham-ort said she initially didn't notice anything strange about him. Even though he had become more violent, she thought it was due to the burden of leading the clan. But that wasn't the case. She accidentally witnessed Od-grat killing a fellow Galagon. The victim was Od-grat's first mate and the oldest female white Galagon in the clan. Od-grat mercilessly disposed of the one he had been with the longest. Before dying, the old mate severed her tail, causing the ring she wore on it to fall off briefly. Ham-ort, who had been secretly observing, caught a glimpse of her emotions the moment the ring fell off. He was not in his right mind, overwhelmed with unknown rage and desperation. The splendid black dragon she once knew was gone, leaving only a mad tyrant behind. After having the ring placed on his front paw due to his tail being severed, he calmly lied to the clan the next day. He claimed that the old white Galagon had been killed in a sky wool attack. A ring that distorts emotions, huh? It's not an item that exists in the game. What would be the point of a ring that hides one's emotions? Moreover, it's hardly useful for beings like Galagons, for whom emotional expression is crucial. Such a tool would be unnecessary for Galagons who deeply trust their kin. Except for those who can read the future. Based on Adhay's case, to grow beyond a white Galagon, one must consume another white Galagon. Thus, the process of evolving from a white Galagon to the next stage naturally leads to combat with the clan leader or war with another clan. A white Galagon that survives the war becomes a black Galagon and competes for leadership or forms a new clan. That's the life cycle of a Galagon. In fact, the growth process of Galagons wasn't clearly explained in the game. It was only after coming to this planet and witnessing Adhay's transformation firsthand that I understood it for sure. Since he can see far into the future, he must have foreseen the leadership competition too. There were no other Galagon clans on this planet besides Od-grat's. The only way for a white Galagon to grow was to kill the leader. It's impossible for a regular white Galagon to defeat a black Galagon. Only those capable of becoming a red Galagon can defeat a black Galagon. He used his foresight to eliminate any threats to his position in advance. In reality, he has been periodically killing hatchlings and abandoning eggs outside the nest. He claims it's to reduce the number of weak individuals, citing the clan's hunger as the reason. This might also be why Adha was cast out. Without the ring, he couldn't have done this much. What would happen if the other clan members found out that he killed his kin just to survive? What if it were a mother who lost her child because of him, like Ham-ort? She would never forgive him. At this point, the ring is the only thing that solidifies his control over the clan. If the ring disappears, the collapse of his clan is only a matter of time. That's enough about the ring. Next is foresight. During the conversation, I was able to gather some interesting information about his ability. Od-grat always sleeps before making any important decisions for the clan. When he wakes up, he immediately makes a decision, so none of his mates are unaware of this. Is sleep a catalyst that triggers the ability to foresee the distant future? It's unclear whether sleep is the exact means by which the ability is activated, but it can be generally assumed that foresight is only possible when the body is in a stable state. He can't see far into the future when he's not at rest. Even if he acts on a future he sees in a dream, he won't know how that future might change along the way. Naturally, he will try to move in a way that avoids the foreseen future, but to be certain, he would need to re-observe the future. For instance, let's say I foresee a future where I die by being hit by a car. I would move far away from the road to avoid the car, but if a building next to the sidewalk suddenly collapses, I wouldn't be able to avoid death. To prevent this, I would need to re-observe the future where I die under the building after avoiding the car. Simply put, I just need to succeed in luring him. This means he won't be able to see the future while fighting with me. To lure him in, I'd have to weaken myself. It's not impossible, but it's certainly not an easy task. There are plenty of dangerous variables as well. I need to steel myself. With my thoughts quickly organized, I asked Ham-ort another question. ZZZZZZZZZZZZ, was there anything strange when you fought him? Didn't understand. Explain. In detail. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, like it dodging your attacks as if he knew what you were going to do in advance. Completely overpowered. Impossible to threaten. ZZZ, I see. In fact, just blocking his ability to foresee the distant future is a significant gain. Just like with Predator's sense, while it helps in mitigating immediate dangers, it doesn't change the structure of the dangers themselves. I'll have to verify the rest by confronting it directly. ZZZZZZZ, one last thing. Ask away. ZZZZZZZZZZ, this isn't a question. There's one last thing I need to confirm before I proceed with my plan. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ would you stake your life on it? Daughter of the meteor. For the sake of saving our kin. Decide it. Life. Doesn't matter. Her response was immediate. There wasn't the slightest hesitation in her emotional waves. Given her answer now and our conversation so far, she seemed to possess a strong sense of camaraderie, even among the Galagons. She's not the kind to easily abandon her offspring. Though I'm not a Galagon, I could clearly understand the feelings she harbored toward Od-grat. While her attitude towards her daughter might be ambiguous, she wasn't cold-blooded enough to kill her just because she was born with a weak body. It seems there's more to the story. That's something I don't need to delve into. It's a matter for Od-grat and her to resolve between themselves. I've checked everything I needed to. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ. That's all I wanted to ask. Go in and rest. Ham-ort nodded at me and turned away. Before entering the nest, she looked once more in the direction where Od-grat had disappeared. The others hadn't returned yet. She stood for a moment, gazing beyond the forest, before entering the nest. ZZZZZZZZZ, could you pack me a few pieces of food? Got it. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, and while you're at it, bring the equipment backpack from inside as well. Do I look like your mother? Mother of the Sky grumbled but still complied with my request. After entering the cave, she came back out and handed me the backpack. I think you've gathered enough information. So, what are you going to do now? She must have been listening to my conversation with Ham-ort, as she seemed to have reached a conclusion similar to mine, that the next step is to fight Od-grat. But it seems we have different ideas on how to fight. Normally, I would have explained, but not this time. It might influence the future that Od-grat sees. The battle with him has already begun. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, you won't be disappointed, I promise. She tilted her head, puzzled by my words. When I remained silent, offering no further explanation, she didn't press me any further. The Galagons ate outside the nest, while Mother of the Sky busied herself going in and out of the cave to care for Ham-ort. Everyone eventually retreated into the nest, but I stayed outside, waiting for them. As I waited, my mind was filled with various plans and strategies, each one more complex than the last. This is a plan I've never attempted, either in this world or in the real world. I need to proceed with the utmost caution. Time passed, and they finally returned. Great Elder. I'm back. Why are you outside all alone, big one? ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ. It's because we were waiting for you to return. Looks like they persuaded well. Od-grat, who had been looking gloomy, now appeared much better, with more strength in her wings. I suppose it's thanks to number 26's gentle coaxing. She's a thoughtful one. Despite her childish speech, Her words and actions sometimes resonate deeply with me. Looking back, I'm grateful I didn't devour her when we first met on the research ship. She's a good one, but from now on, I'm going to do something terrible to her. Not just her, but to Adha, PS 111, Mother of the Sky, and everyone here. ZZZZZZZ, Ham-ort, come out. Great Elder. Is Big One trying to mediate? Instead of answering their questions, I called for Ham-ort again. Shortly after, both Ham-ort and Mother of the Sky emerged from the nest. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, Ham-ort caused discord within my group. What? Great Elder, what are you saying? Big One. Everyone was shocked by my unexpected words. Ham-ort, however, remained unfazed. She glanced briefly at Adha. In that fleeting moment, her amethyst-like eyes captured the image of the little Gagon born from the stars. After taking one last look at her daughter, Ham-ort turned her gaze back to me, her eyes devoid of any emotion. She had already steeled herself. I reached out with my winged arm and grabbed her by the throat. Hey. Wait a minute. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZ. Therefore, I will kill you and eat your flesh. Realizing I was serious about devouring Ham-ort, Mother of the Sky reached out to stop me. But before she could, I opened my jaws wide. Just as my jaws, split in two, were about to engulf Ham-ort's head. Great Elder, stop. I was thrown sideways by a powerful impact, the force reverberating through my entire body, causing me to lose my grip on Ham-ort. Daughter of the Meteor. Great Elder. I have something to say. Please wait. The one who attacked me was Adha. The red markings on her head indicated she was using the red Gagon's ability, the red armor. I was planning to teach her that later. I had intended to show her how to use the red armor effectively in both offense and defense, but she was smart enough to figure it out on her own. While Adha stood between Ham-ort and me, Mother of the Sky also jumped in front of me. What do you think you're doing? ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, I'm only trying to protect my group. Don't interfere. Are you serious? ZZZZZZZZZZ, if you get in my way, I'll remove you. Without hesitation, I swung my tail with great force. Startled, she planted her feet firmly on the ground, just in time for my tail to slam into it, shattering the earth. You insane. You moronic, crazy amorph. Since she couldn't use the ice spirit, I retracted my tail and opened my jaws wide. From deep within my throat, a glob of acidic fungal mass shot out, aimed directly at her. But then, the mass froze in mid-air. Big One, what's wrong with you? Number 26, who had used its binding ability on the fungal mass, asked with concern evident in its voice. I didn't respond, instead turning to PS 111. ZZZZZZZZZZZ, assist me in attacking them. Attack command denied. Cannot harm the main controller. ZZZZZZZZZ, then start with the others. PS 111, usually expressionless, looked uncharacteristically troubled. It shook its head slowly. Impossible. The current amorph is experiencing a clear state of mental derangement and impaired judgment. I advise you to stabilize. Standing beside number 26, PS 111 opened its mouth, ready to fire its demolisher if necessary. Stupid machines, always so literal. Despite its analysis, my mind was perfectly clear. I was deliberately choosing to turn against everyone. This plan, executed based on my rational judgment, stems from my complete trust in those who've been with me until now. At least I made the right choice. I glanced around at everyone present. None of them sided with my sudden outburst. It was only natural. My current actions were undeniably a betrayal of the group. Good. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, since everyone has betrayed me, I will leave. Wait. ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ, I'll also return the parasite in your head. Wait. Ah. At my command, the parasite lodged in Mother of the Sky's head began to emerge through her eye socket. The Wendigo form it took had no nostrils, so it exited through another opening. She staggered, recoiling from the unpleasant sensation of the parasite leaving her body. I retrieved the parasite and grabbed the bag containing my gear. Big One, are you serious? Are you really leaving? Great Elder. This is a joke, right? ZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZZ They should understand the gravity of my words. If they don't, that would be a problem. With everything in order, I spread my winged arms. The membrane, as vast as the night sky above, unfurled, lifting my body into the air. As I soared into the distance, no one followed. A small sense of relief mixed with bitterness welled up inside me. No, it has to be this way. I shook my head as I flew through the storm clouds. The stage that Od-grat wanted was now fully set. Now, it's time to lure him into the trap. Chapter 227. He had many names. The one blessed by the stars, the sage who gained the wisdom of the stars, the strongest male, and so on. But among all the names, the one he liked the most was this. The great Od-grat. No expression described him as well as the word great. There was no creature in the world as special as him, born with the blessings of the stars. He could see the future. Sometimes in dreams, sometimes in visions. Thanks to this foresight he had from birth, he could avoid any danger that came his way. He also used this ability actively to protect his pack. Since the time of the aquamarine scales, he had gone out hunting with his kind, ensuring they never fell into danger. His kind trusted him, calling him a wise young being. As time passed, he became the strongest leader of the pack. He earned the respect of many of his kind and had beautiful, strong females as his mates. Everything was perfect. Until he met that dwarf. Before the flow of stars changed dozens of times. Someone infiltrated the nest and stole the eggs. The thieves were dwarfs, the likes of which he had never seen before. They came in a flying vessel that smelled similar to minerals. Enraged, he attempted to attack the vessel that the dwarfs were on. He would have done so if the future had not warned him. He could never forget the future he saw then. The moment he attacked, one of the strange dwarfs stepped forward. He killed him along with all of his kind. The dwarfs took all the eggs. No matter how hard he tried to avoid destruction, the future he saw never changed. The strange dwarf in the vessel was on a different level. No matter what he did, he couldn't win against him. If he had been another of his kind, they would not have given up. But Od-grat was different. He had always thought differently from his kind, thanks to his ability to see the future. The fear of death, the anxiety over an uncontrollable future, emotions he had never felt in his life swelled up inside him. The very ability that made him great consumed him. In the end, he succumbed to fear. He bowed his head before the dwarf and begged, promising to do anything if he would spare his life. Perhaps the dwarf, no, the Transcendent One, was surprised by his actions. The Transcendent One seemed pleased with his behavior. The Transcendent One did not kill him. Instead, he bestowed grace upon Od-grat. He revealed to his secrets even Od-grat didn't know, things happening among the stars, and the truth of this world. The moment he started listening to the Transcendent One's words, the world he knew shattered completely. His beloved mates, the young ones he sometimes played with, the strong white-scaled kin he went hunting with. All of them were worthless. They were no different from the lumps of metal scattered outside. The Transcendent One spoke. Only Od-grat was a unique being. He was the only one worthy of becoming an avatar of the stars, and it would be a waste to kill him now. He didn't understand exactly what that meant, but it didn't matter. What mattered more was that the Transcendent One assured him of his life. After the deal with the Transcendent One, he survived. As a token of their newfound friendship, the Transcendent One even gave him a precious gift. But the young leader who loved his kind was no longer there. Only the great Od-grat remained. That great Od-grat had now awakened from a long sleep. The fight with the cunning black-scaled kin ended unpleasantly. He had to rush back because the kin of that wretch attacked the nest. Losing the traitor was no small loss, but there was a bigger problem. The future in which the black-scaled kin would kill him had not changed. Only then did he recall the Transcendent One's warning. The steel bestowed upon him by the Transcendent One had spoken to him, saying that a being who might be able to kill him would appear. But Od-grat couldn't heed that warning. Dealing with the defectors within his pack was more urgent. Even the dreams hadn't warned him of an ominous future. Because of that, he acted carelessly. In hindsight, he might have been inevitable. He had spent his entire life choosing only futures that his abilities could control. This time too, he decided to rely on his abilities. After all, wasn't it the ability to see the future that had allowed him to survive without clashing with the Transcendent One? The power to see the future was surely going to guide him on the right path. Od-grat, having awakened from his dream, emitted a telepathic wave. Finally. Victory. I have seen it. After wandering through his dreams for several days in search of an answer, he had found a way to change the future. Od-grat. Commands. All kin. Prepare. Hunt. Join me. All. Can. Nest. Defense. Impossible. I command again. All kin who can fight. Every one of you. Follow me. Refusal. Will not be forgiven. His mates cautiously voiced their dissent, but Od-grat did not listen. In his dream, he had seen. He was standing on top of a peculiar mountain peak. Beneath his feet lay the battered black-scaled kin. He saw himself cutting the kin's throat with sharp claws, drinking his blood. The great Od-grat had claimed victory once again. Minus. Having flown a considerable distance from the nest, I landed on one of the peaks of the vast mountain range. There was a nest made of broken tree debris mixed with glittering gem shards. This was the twin peaks I had visited not long ago to capture a crystalling. I lay down on the nest that had lost its owner. By now, he must have seen. Since I had defected from the pack, Od-grat's vision of the future would have changed. He would try to strike me as soon as possible, knowing that such an opportunity might not come again. FGUNVEL.com. There aren't many twin peaks in this area. And there are even fewer places where a crystalwing's nest can be found, like the one I'm lying in. If he saw me in his dream, it wouldn't be hard to find. There was still time before they arrived. I unpacked the equipment I had brought. Blood Reaver, Demolisher, the Harmonizer. These were all spoils I had collected from enemies I had fought so far. Besides what I had taken out, there were more bags of spoils in the nest. The priest's golden spear wasn't in this bag. Originally, it was, but I had intentionally removed it and thrown it into a pit. Mother of the Sky would know what I mean. I trust that they will soon realize my intention, but just in case, I prepared a backup plan. She knows how useful the priest's golden spear is. Once she checks the spear hidden in the pit, she'll understand my intent. I doubt they'll feast on it immediately after I left. They'll probably find it by tomorrow morning. This is the first time I've ever executed a plan with so many variables. Still, this was the best way to keep Od-grat in the dark. I replayed the fight with him in my mind. There were two major instances when I could be sure that his danger-sensing ability activated, when I used the Divine Spectre and when I activated the Abyssal Hue. It wasn't as clear when the cruiser exploded, though. Given that he didn't suffer a fatal injury, it's highly likely he foresaw the future and evaded it. In short, the attacks he avoided by seeing the future were all ones that could have inflicted serious injuries on him. The Enhanced Watcher of Fear is slightly different, but it's still directly tied to death. The Watcher of Fear imbued with the Abyssal Hues causes its target to continuously experience the most horrific pain. In that state, combat, let alone flight, would be impossible, so it's certainly related to death. But he didn't show that reaction to other attacks. Even though the Black Galagon's hide is tough, it's not invincible as long as it's a living creature. Repeated hits from a regular psychic breath or other attacks would cause injuries. In fact, he bled when hit by the cruiser's main cannon. It didn't seem like he predicted the future at that time. The cult's cruiser's main cannon can injure the Black Galagon. However, killing it in one blow is impossible. Therefore, it's highly likely that his danger-sensing ability only activates in response to single attacks that can kill him or inflict fatal wounds leading to death. Both the Divine Spectre and the Abyssal Hue fall into this category. As for the Psychic Reflective Armor, it's still unclear. I looked down at the equipment I had laid out. It doesn't align well with its ability and the Divine Spectre. The Divine Spectre is extremely powerful, but because of its overwhelming strength, it's not ideal in this situation. His predictive ability would likely detect it. In that case, I need to change tactics. I activated a translucent text box. Plunderer's amorphous polyhedron, devour a piece of equipment to specialize in the unique ability of that equipment. Can only be used once per equipment, and the previous equipment's special effects are lost when devouring new equipment. A few months ago, I obtained the ability Plunderer's amorphous polyhedron after killing the cyborg player Muriel. By devouring the cult's orbital weapon Brain God, I acquired the characteristic of using the Brain God's power through the Divine Spectre. And here, I'm planning to devour new equipment. Among the equipment in front of me, there are 3 items worth devouring. The Blood Reaver and the Harmonizer obtained from Muriel and the Demolisher acquired from the Temple Guards and Cruiser. The Demolisher. I picked up the rectangular gun that resembled a pencil case. The characteristic created by the Plunderer's amorphous polyhedron follows the traits of the devoured equipment. Devour a plasma launcher, and you gain plasma beams. Devour the Brain God, and you gain the brain god's power. If I devour the demolisher, I'd be able to shoot beams with matter manipulation effects. But this won't work, will it? The demolish's bullets can disintegrate even the hardest substances. Since its effects are similar to the psychic breath enhanced by the abyssal hue, it would likely trigger Od-grat's danger sensing ability. Next is the harmonizer. The harmonizer, a cross-shaped halo headband, is a trophy I gained after killing Muriel. Originally, Jason also had the harmonizer, but when he teleported, his equipment disappeared along with him, so I couldn't obtain it. The harmonizer's ability isn't bad either. The harmonizer is a reward for clearing the cult's unique system quest at stage 9. While wearing this headband, you automatically teleport to a nearby location whenever you sustain a fatal injury. The concept is that it atomizes your body and moves it, and as a result, your injuries are completely healed after teleportation, a terrifying effect. You can teleport up to 5 times. In other words, it's like having 5 lives. Teleportation is great, but it's not useful here. What I need is a means of attack that can inflict moderate damage without triggering his ability. Having a defense mechanism is nice, but at this moment, it's hard to say it would be useful. The last one is the Blood Reaver. I looked down at the small spider-shaped machine, no bigger than a finger joint. It may look small and cute, but it's actually a very dangerous device. After all, it's a unique war machine of the Star Union. In terms of rank, it's on par with the Brain God. In fact, their production costs are almost identical. In the game, the Blood Reaver is frequently used in various situations, including player versus player combat, capturing rare creatures, and weakening powerful raid boss-level entities. When the Blood Reaver is activated, it attaches itself to a specific target and begins draining their life force. The absorption speed is so rapid that even the strongest enemies experience a significant reduction in combat power. One might think that it could be detected and avoided beforehand, but that's impossible. The metals and paints that make up the Blood Reaver have effects that nullify detection. Even my auxiliary organs can't pick it up. This nearly got me killed when I fought Muriel. Back then, I had preemptively activated the Gremlin Moss characteristic, which renders machines useless, allowing me to neutralize the Blood Reaver. Considering the effects of the Blood Reaver, it's well suited for this situation. It provides me with a means to steadily accumulate damage on it without delivering a single fatal blow. As I examined the equipment laid out before me, I lifted my head to look at the sky. With the thick clouds still blanketing the area, it was difficult to gauge the time, but I could roughly tell that it was night. I still have some time left, so I'll think it over slowly. Besides the 3 main pieces of equipment, there are other items in my bag. I began pulling them out one by one, contemplating how best to use them. Truth be told, I've already decided what I'm going to use, but I'm doing this out of anxiety. Can I really defeat an enemy that can read the future? What if he changes his target? What if he attacks Adha or the others first instead of me? I arrive back at the nest too late, only to find their corpses strewn about. Number 26 curses me as it dies from its wounds, accusing me of abandoning them to save myself. Stop. I slammed my head hard against the ground. Maybe it's because of the cold snow, but the ominous thoughts vanished in an instant, and my mind felt clearer. I don't lose. Almost nothing has gone perfectly according to my plans up to this point. There have always been unexpected variables and unforeseen crises. But I've survived. No adversity, no formidable enemy has been able to overcome me. Od-grat will be no different. It will come here, and I will devour every last drop of his genetic essence. With that thought, I waited. Time passed, and the clouds shifted. The storm intensified, with snow, lightning, and gales whipping together. The weather had become so extreme that it was beyond mere bad weather, an outright severe storm. In the midst of this relentless onslaught of harsh conditions, my auxiliary organs detected something. A large number of massive objects were rapidly approaching this location. They're here. I pulled out the equipment from my bag and swallowed it. The plunderer's amorphous polyhedron activated, and the structure within my body began to change. As I felt the departure of the divine specter, which had been with me for so long, I looked up at the sky. Behind the veil of the storm, I saw black wings. The long wait was over. The time for the hunt had come. Chapter 228. As the Galagons flying toward me suddenly stopped and changed formation, they encircled the peak where I stood, maintaining a careful distance. Soon, purple lights flashed from beyond the clouds, surrounding me in a ring before launching a synchronized barrage. As expected, a torrent of psychic breaths filled the vast sky, making it nearly impossible to evade, even for Adha, the fastest Galagon I had encountered. Not that I intend to dodge. I spread my winged arms and combat tentacles wide, ready to embrace the oncoming wave of violet energy. The breath unleashed by these cosmic dragons crashed down upon the mountain peak. The nest of the jewel, now devoid of its master, shattered into pieces, while the trees that formed a small forest were swept away in the tidal wave of energy. The ground beneath my feet crumbled, sending the peak itself flying away. The psychic breath barrage triggered a massive avalanche halfway up the mountain. The sheer scale of it was such that it seemed to cleanse the entire mountain in snow and ice. The thunderous roar of the avalanche drowned out the deafening noise of the breath. "Cease your fire," Od-grat commanded, and the Galagon swarm halted. The coordinated breath attack was as formidable as the fleet of the Cult Empire. Thanks to them, this place was now so devastated that it could no longer be called the Twin Peaks. One of the Galagons approached through the blizzard to confirm the result. At that moment, I fiercely shook the newly formed wings with red stripes. The snow and ice that had covered me fell away, and my body soared upward. My wings whipped up a storm, dispelling the blizzard. The green Galagon was startled by the sight of me unscathed. It was only natural, given that not a single wound marred my form despite the barrage. I charged at the green Galagon, who was unable to react properly. My horn, now far more savage than when we last met, pierced through its abdomen. The creature thrashed in agony. To end its suffering quickly, I gripped its body with my tentacles. And then, with a surge of power, I tore its body apart. The Galagon's blood drenched my cold scales. Among the scattered fragments, I didn't miss its head, which I caught with the pincers of my tail. The Galagons were visibly shaken, perhaps intimidated by my brutal display. Only Od-grat, soaring regally behind the Galagons, maintained his composure. The Black Butcher. Though he had launched the first attack as a precaution, it seemed he had expected that I wouldn't die from it. However, he probably hadn't anticipated that I would be completely unscathed. "You have changed. ZZZZZZZZZZZ, we have prepared to hunt you. Foolishness, the great Od-grat will not be defeated." At his nod, the Galagons that had encircled me began to close in. Having confirmed that their breath attacks were ineffective, they seemed intent on engaging in close combat. I flicked my tail, tossing the green Galagon's head into my mouth. As I drank its sweet blood, I unleashed my most powerful weapon. The black scales covering my body shimmered with eerie hues of green, purple, and an unknown color. The rainbow-colored tar from the abyss flowed through the monster's tentacles, which extended from the back of my head, down my neck, and to my jaw. Then, the essence of the abyss formed at the tips of the tentacles. A bubble-shaped psychic breath moved to engulf the enemies. Upon seeing the bubble, the Galagons scattered swiftly. As they did, they tossed something into the air with their front claws. What they threw was a chunk of flesh from an unknown creature. Despite my intent, the psychic breath was drawn to the meat first. The chunk of flesh, melting under the psychic breath, plummeted to the invisible ground below. Though distant, I could see that the others also held several pieces of flesh with their front claws, hind legs, and tails. Clever. Just as I had analyzed him, Od-grat had clearly studied my abilities as well. The psychic breath infused with the abyssal hue is incredibly powerful, with a chain explosion effect, making it highly effective in brawls against groups. When it consumes an organism, it automatically targets the nearest new enemy. The downside is that the psychic breath doesn't distinguish between friend and foe, and its projection speed is slow. Od-grat had figured out these weaknesses in that short time and prepared a countermeasure. If only number 26 were here, this wouldn't be a big problem. It must have known that I was alone, which is why it chose this method. The Galagons that had neutralized my enhanced psychic breath closed in on me. With them this close, I could no longer use the abyssal hue. A Galagon with white scales swung its front claw at me, its sharp talons grazing the carapace on my head. Feeling the sparks fly above my head, I opened my lower jaw and bit down on its arm. Before it could pull away, I grasped its body tightly with my combat tentacles. Another green Galagon lunged at me from behind. I swung my tail, which was hanging limply toward the ground, with all my might. I felt the satisfying impact through the pincers at the end of my tail. I ignored the green Galagon as it plummeted with a broken neck and pulled back the head of the white Galagon I had bitten. The arm in my mouth was torn off along with it, and its mental waves of pain echoed through the air. All at once, surround it. At Od-grat's command, the Galagons charged at me in unison. I bit down harder on the head of the white Gagon, swinging my tail. The Gagon that had been flying at me saw my tail and ducked in surprise. In that moment, I threw the headless corpse and leapt into the midst of the oncoming swarm. Green and white scales flashed chaotically, and their claws raked against my carapace and scales. One of the white Galagons stabbed its horn into my side. Its sharp horn pierced through my scales and dug into my flesh. Pain nullification activated. The text box warned me, but I ignored it. I had deliberately acted this way to wipe them out all at once. Sharp claws and deadly horns rained down on me, intent on killing me. I paid them no mind and extended all 4 combat tentacles, grabbing the Galagons. With 4 long tentacles, I firmly grasped their body parts and activated the trait I had gained by devouring the Blood Reaver. /and in many previous chapters the Blood Reaver is named as Blood Raver, which is wrong. Blood Reaver sounds much more convincing, so we will follow this word from now. Sorry for the inconvenience. Leeching Hand. Immediately, the condition of the Galagons I held changed drastically. Their once smooth scales shriveled rapidly, and their skin and muscles began to soften and sag. The sturdy horns atop their heads crumbled, and their once moist tentacles withered and dried out. In less than a few seconds, the 4 Galagons had become shriveled mummies. Simultaneously, the wound on my side healed at a rapid pace. While I do have regenerative abilities, this was on another level entirely. By the time I had drained the life from the one that had pierced me, even my scales had fully regenerated. The effect of the Leeching Hand was simple. It absorbed the enemy's energy to heal my body. The difference was just how absurdly effective it was. Fall back, beware of its grasp. The astute Od-grat quickly realized the effect of my actions. The Galagons that had been clawing at me swiftly retreated. Where do you think you're going? Just as I reached out to grab the tail of a fleeing white Galagon, a powerful breath struck me. Od-grat. Finally, it had decided to intervene directly. I examined the area where the breath had hit. The spot that took the direct hit had its scales and skin peeled away, exposing the muscles beneath, and the surrounding area was searing hot. Even with the mimic scales active, it inflicted this much damage. Definitely a being beyond normal standards. However, thanks to the energy absorbed through the Leeching Hand, the wound healed almost instantly. For a moment, a familiar hue flashed across the searing carapace and then vanished. A strange light, a mix of green and purple, much like the abyssal hue when activated. Pain nullification activated. Ugh. My thoughts were cut short as Od-grat suddenly rammed into me. Perhaps due to the added momentum, his horn easily tore through my combat tentacles and wing membrane. I tried to grab him, but he had already retreated at high speed. Is this what it means to be a being beyond normal standards? This is a tactic that Adha often uses, but the result was on a different level. Due to the difference in size and power output, the destructive force was incomparable. As I plummeted due to the hole in my wing, Od-grat circled around and flew towards me. I activated Observer of Terror, enhanced with the abyssal hue. A sinister light emanated from my head carapace, and multicolored bubbles began to form. The moment I used the ability, another Galagon shot a psychic breath at the bubbles. The bubbles exploded mid-air, failing to advance any further and falling to the ground. Using the absorbed energy, I regenerated the membrane of my wings and tried to gain altitude, but Od-grat blocked my path. His speed was astonishing, like a bolt of black lightning. He charged at my abdomen, aiming to impale me with his horn. However, this time I was prepared. I narrowly avoided a direct hit, the horn grazing my side, and I lashed out with my corrosive tentacles to ensnare him. One of the tentacles nearly caught his hind leg, but he kicked hard, breaking free. As I exchanged blows with Od-grat, other Galagons targeted my back. Like Od-grat, they utilized their hyper-acceleration ability, slashing at me with their claws before quickly retreating. So they're trying to wear me down like this. Their numbers were in the dozens. Even if each one succeeded in attacking just once, it would inflict significant damage on me. As expected of a clever opponent, he had chosen a crafty tactic, despite his usual arrogance. But I was no stranger to close-quarters combat. I endured their attacks, waiting for an opportunity. A green Galagon flew toward me. Attacking prematurely compared to the others, it must have been a less experienced one. It's hard to change course while in hyper-acceleration. I predicted its trajectory in advance and dodged while extending my corrosive tentacles. Its attack missed, and my tentacles snagged its wing. The green Galagon panicked. I extended my combat tentacles, ready to drain all of its energy. You cannot use that ability. But Od-grat wasn't about to let me heal. A breath attack from the black dragon incinerated not me, but the green Gagon entirely. True to his nature as an unusually savage Gagon, he had chosen to sacrifice his kin. Fine. Keep doing that. But I wasn't discouraged. This, too, would ultimately work to my advantage. This scenario repeated several times. Each time I tried to use the leeching hand, Od-grat would blast away my potential healing source, his own kind. I tried to counterattack and close in on them, but chasing down hyper-accelerating enemies was no easy task. And whenever I managed to grab one to heal, Od-grat's attack would quickly follow. I had slain fewer Galagons than Od-grat had, yet they continued to follow him. Despite the undercurrent of defiance, they showed no signs of betrayal or allegiance to a new leader. The battle was slowly tipping in their favor. The energy I had absorbed with the leeching hand had long been depleted, and my injuries were mounting. Pain nullification activated. Just now, Od-grat had torn off one of my combat tentacles. It even drank the blood from the severed limb, a blatant provocation. In response, I unleashed a psychic breath. Without the abyssal hue enhancing it, Od-grat didn't bother dodging and countered with his own psychic fire. The sky above the dark ocean turned a deep purple, as if the sun were rising. It was a magnificent sight created by the combined powers of the black Gagon and an amorph with Gagon genes. But from my perspective, it wasn't a favorable one. I was giving it my all, but Od-grat clearly wasn't. As we clashed in a power struggle, Od-grat suddenly increased the output of his breath, as if deciding to end this game. The tug of war had been evenly matched, but then, as if I had lost strength, the psychic power surged violently toward me. The psychic breath he fired, combined with the rebound of my own power, slammed into my entire body. The mimicry scales prevented my body from disintegrating in an instant, but the pain and injuries were unavoidable. Part of my wing membrane burned away, causing me to plummet onto a peak below. As I fell, a strange light briefly flashed across my reddened carapace before vanishing again. Before I could figure out why this kept happening, a massive shock overwhelmed my mind. My body crashed into the mangled peak. Pain nullification activated. Instead of pain, I felt a deep sense of weariness. Ignoring the text box, I gazed up at the sky. How much time has passed? It had been quite a while since I started fighting these creatures. The sky was still filled with dark clouds, making it impossibly gloomy. Except for one spot. The clash with Od-grat had created a white line among the clouds. Through the crack, a sliver of white light could be seen. Then, black wings blocked the light. Od-grat landed in front of me. I swiftly extended the combat tentacles that had been buried in the ground, but he evaded easily, as if anticipating my move. Using his future-seeing ability, he avoided my surprise attack and struck my arm with his tail. The creature broke my arm and easily deflected the incoming corrosive tentacle with his front paw. As I prepared to unleash a psychic breath, enhanced with the abyssal hue, he sneered. It's useless. Predicting my move, he sliced off my monstrous tentacle with a swipe of his paw. Grrr. My mind went blank, and I let out an involuntary scream. Messages about pain suppression flashed repeatedly, but I couldn't register any of them. Such excruciating pain hadn't hit me since being struck by the abyss-colored observer of terror. I was paralyzed, unable to think or act. The Black Butcher's weakness has been exposed. Grrr. Did you not know of the great Od-grat's power, you fool? He dragged me out of the ground. I should have grabbed him with my combat tentacles, but I lacked the strength. Crushing me underfoot and with his tail, he taunted. Once again, the great Od-grat is victorious. He raised his ring-bearing paw high, and sunlight streamed through the fractured sky, illuminating his back. It was the first time in ages I had seen such light. And as I noticed small specks moving within that radiance, I played my final card. Die. Od-grat tore a chunk of flesh from my neck with a swipe of his paw. Blood spurted out, and my consciousness began to fade. Gazing at me, mortally wounded, he drank the blood from my wounds with arrogant confidence, certain of his victory. His attitude revealed only one truth. Zzzzz, so this is the end. Zzzzz, the future you saw. Od-grat recoiled, startled that I wasn't dead. In that moment of surprise, I used the bone scythe arm that had sprouted from my back and struck him down. Specifically, I severed the paw bearing the ring. You wretch. He quickly retreated, his front paw now severed. I picked up the fallen limb and absorbed it. Why won't you die? Seeing my neck wound healing, Od-grat shouted in fury. There was one thing his future vision had missed, the true weakness of an amorph. To kill an amorph instantly, both the head and heart must be destroyed, not the neck or any other part. Brethren, kill the Black Butcher. Od-grat spread his wings and soared into the air, sending out a mental wave commanding them to attack me, whether by charging or firing psychic breaths. But the Galagons didn't move. Od-grat commands you. Kill the Black Butcher. He issued the order again, but they didn't even glance at him. Every Galagon, except the Black Dragon, had their gaze fixed on one point. Zzzzz, Od-grat. You wretch. Instead of responding, I pointed a finger at the sky. For the first time since arriving on this planet, I saw a bright light. 6 Galagons stood silhouetted against it. Od-grat recoiled in shock as he recognized them. I sent out a wave, gazing at the red dragon among them. Zzzzz, serve the queen. The abandoned and the traitors. The remnants of the past had come to slay the Black Tyrant. Chapter 229. Under the light, I saw 6 Galagons. 3 had green scales, along with the white Galagon, Nelgerma, and Ham-ort, whose wings were nearly healed. And then there was Adha, adorned in her red makeup. Above the Galagons were some familiar figures. Perched on Ham-ort was the Mother of the Sky, transformed into a Wendigo, while the mutant screamer PS-111 rode on Nelgerma. Ahead of them, on top of Adha, was a small pink balloon. This was number 26, known as the Sea Demon. They all gathered here to assist me on this lonely journey. Od-grat. I command you. Attack. Attack. The Black Dragon kept barking orders, but none of the others followed. Amid the confusion, the frail white Galagon stepped forward. Great Od-grat. Black. Enemy. Color of the stars. Enemy. Strength. No. Enemy. Just a traitor. It's a lie. Can. Lie. Impossible. Color. Lie. Impossible. According to the lore, a red Galagon is a mythical being that commands all Galagons, one of the few creatures that can instill an instinctual fear in them, known as the Dragon of the Universe. Of course, Adha hasn't fully grown yet. Her dragon power is pitifully weak compared to the red Galagon I've seen before, even weaker than Od-grat. Yet, the reason the Galagon horde is in disarray is clear. It's all because of Od-grat's vile actions as the Black Tyrant. He abused and starved his kin, ignored their strong sense of kinship, and killed the weaker offspring. Had he behaved like a normal Galagon, they would have obeyed his commands, as he was their leader who had protected them until now. But he was never a good king for the Galagons. Od-grat. Emotion. Understanding. Difficulty. Explanation. Request. And now, he's lost the means to control his kin. His treasure, the ring that hides emotions, was torn from him along with his forepaw when I attacked him with my bone-scythed arm. That ring is now in my possession. I clenched it tightly with the small hand on my chest. You. Od-grat snarled as he saw it. He had always exploited the Galagons' inability to lie, but that was no longer possible. It was easy to imagine how the other Galagons would perceive him now that they knew his true intentions. They'll likely see him as completely insane. Or perhaps as a wicked tyrant who enslaved and massacred his kin. The frail white Galagon, who defied Od-grat, continued to send out waves of thought. Kin. Stronger kin. Follow. New leader. Decision. Necessary. It clearly expressed its refusal to fight, then retreated. The other Galagons followed suit, backing away. Now, only Od-grat's mates remained as enemies. By coincidence, there were 6 of them left, as one had died in my previous attack. It so happens that we also have 6 beings capable of flight on our side. Including those riding on our backs, we outnumber them. No more thinking or talking is necessary. From here on, strength will determine everything. I pushed off the ground and soared into the air. Though my neck wound wasn't fully healed, the carapace formed by my symbol of hunt transformation had stopped the bleeding. To fully recover, I needed nourishment. The genetic essence of the Black Galagon should be sufficient. I flapped my wings, which now gleamed with red veins, and flew towards Od-grat. Thanks to the symbol of hunt's effect, my wings were larger and stronger than before. Od-grat was startled to see me approach so quickly. Insignificant creature. I pressed close to him, swinging my tail with all the force I could muster. The tip of my tail, like a colossal flail, hurtled towards him with a menacing sound. Perhaps realizing that it was impossible to block my attack even with foresight, Od-grat chose to evade. One of his black wings bent slightly, causing his body to lurch. My tail's pincer scraped against the horn on his head as it passed by. Having narrowly avoided my attack, Od-grat immediately fired a psychic breath from his position. Unlike me, who needed time to charge, his speed was undoubtedly faster. However, his breath no longer posed a significant threat to me. With my body reinforced by the symbol and the mimicry scales effect, I was now almost completely immune to psychic power. Of course, I couldn't entirely ignore the physical force of his breath. The impact pushed me back, and Od-grat quickly retreated. While I fought Od-grat, the battle between his mates and my allies began. Ner'jrma, who displayed above-average combat skills, dove into the midst of Od-grat's mates. PS-111, riding atop her, relentlessly fired demolisher blue energy blasts from its mouth. One of the mates was hit by a blast that disintegrated matter on the edge of its wing and urgently warned its kin. Just like in the fight against me, the enemies scattered quickly. Just as planned, the enemies have dispersed. Everyone, prepare yourselves. Understood. One of the scattered enemies flew towards the green Galagons in Ham-ort's group. It seemed intent on tearing apart the weaker ones first and rejoining its kin swiftly. But such a predictable attack wouldn't fool my allies. The still recovering pure white queen blocked the white mate's path. Riding on her back, the Mother of the Sky unleashed the ice wraith she had prepared in advance. The white Galagon, who had been flying perfectly fine, was suddenly infected with the Wendigo's madness and turned on her. The crazed Galagon fired a breath at her, but she boldly evaded the purple heat beam. She leapt into the air, grabbing onto Ham-ort's horn, narrowly avoiding the beam. Though she fell to the ground according to the laws of nature, Ham-ort skillfully tilted her head to catch her. Are you all right? Would you stop if I said yes? Little one. Knowing you can't. Stop. TCH, let's finish this quickly. The combination of the ice wraith and the pure white queen pulled the maddened mate away. Meanwhile, the other green Galagons moved to support Ner'jrma and PS-111. If you follow my instructions, your life will not be in danger. Adult. Trust. Me. Trust. Me. Pain. Dislike. The probability of only losing a tail or getting a hole in your wing is 63%, so you can trust me. Suddenly. Uneasiness. Ner'jrma. Pointing out. Facts. All of it. Unnecessary. The combination of green, white Galagons, and mechanical creatures was facing two of Od-grat's mates. 3 of the enemy mates remained. However, their situation was dire. They had to contend with my friends, number 26 and Adha, who had fought together frequently since the Space City. Perhaps because of their experience fighting together, they toyed with the 3 white Galagon mates. Adha, who had always excelled in aerial combat, was now cutting across the battlefield at terrifying speeds. None of the Galagons here could match her speed, which was as fast as a projectile fired from a railgun. Failing to catch up with her, the mates tried to shoot her down with psychic breath. But riding atop her was number 26, our best psychic power expert. Every time number 26 waved its tentacles from atop the glowing red comet, the direction of the heat beams veered off course, or the energy dissipated entirely. With the mates' attacks nullified, Adha pivoted and charged them in return. Activating her red armor, she rammed into one of the mates. Her charge, combined with near-sonic speed and her indestructible horns, was nothing short of devastating. She completely pierced through the mate's abdomen. It was as if a 4-meter-long projectile had punched a hole in the white Galagon's belly, killing it instantly. Number 26, who had been clinging tightly to her back, suddenly popped out. Bon. Do it again. No. Too messy. Just as expected. It seemed like they had discussed their battle plan before arriving here. Their coordination was flawless. You. Where are you looking? While I briefly watched them fight, Od-grat launched a sudden attack. He thrust his head forward, aiming to pierce my chest with his horn. As a clever creature, he quickly realized that I hadn't died despite having my neck half severed and immediately targeted a different spot. Under normal circumstances, I might have commanded his judgment, but not now. The only way for him to survive was to flee from this place. Not that I'm going to let that happen. I slightly twisted my body to narrowly avoid his charge. His horn only managed to scratch the surface of my chest carapace. Od-grat tried to quickly pull his head back after the failed attack, but this time, I was faster. My combat arms grabbed hold of his horn. The predator leech's hand activated, rapidly draining his energy through the horn. Even a large creature like a white Gagon wouldn't last long in my grasp before becoming a withered husk. Od-grat knew this. In desperation, he fired a psychic breath with his horn still caught. The force of the impact pushed me back sharply. I tried to maintain my grip, but the horn broke, and I lost my hold. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I will definitely kill you. Having lost all the horns that a male Gagon could take pride in, Od-grat looked utterly pitiful. He watched as the horn in my hand crumbled into dust and began spewing waves of furious telepathy. You, of all creatures. Never. Never. I will never forgive you. Blinded by rage, he spread his wings wide and ascended into the sky. Is he running away? I could feel his presence rapidly receding. I quickly checked on the others' battles. Unless the Galagons observing us from afar decided to intervene, it didn't seem like my friends would lose. In fact, the situation was tilting more in our favor. Confident, I pursued Od-grat. As I flew up, my black mantle with red patterns billowing behind me, I sensed his energy. What is he doing? A massive amount of energy was emanating from his body, similar to when he uses the maelstrom to create a localized psychic storm. He knows that won't work on me. As that thought crossed my mind, images rapidly flashed before my eyes. In the symbol of hunt state, where my vision is obscured, the only time images appear is when one specific condition is met. Predator sense. This ability, which synthesizes environmental factors to predict the future, was warning me. Thanks to the symbols of hunt's effect, the future images provided by predator sense were much more detailed. The immense energy gathering within Od-grat wasn't meant to create a psychic storm in the sky. The sole purpose of that black dragon's power was to annihilate me. The energy, aligning with his will, began to concentrate and soon transformed into a familiar form. Red diamond-like energy, dragon power. How is that possible? He's an aged black Gagon, not a red Gagon. He's not a special entity like Adha. Moreover, when I last observed him with insight, he was definitely a black Gagon. This means something must have changed during our battle, but I can't pinpoint what caused it. Could it be because he drank my blood? My body contains a significant amount of the genetic essence of the white Gagon. It's possible that Od-grat, by consuming my blood, absorbed some of that essence. No, that's not the main issue right now. The dragon power he created was much more unstable than Adha's. While dragon power should manifest as a bright red, like a red diamond, Od-grat's energy was closer to a reddish purple. That means it was mixed with psychic power. And that impure fusion took the form of a massive beam aimed directly at my head. Od-grat's attack has hit. I am dead. The last attack I saw through predator sense before it ended was a technique I recognize. Starflame. A technique similar to an orbital weapons bombardment, and one of the red Gagon's signature moves. But it's different in many ways. Since it's an attack based on dragon power, it should be purely red, but the starflame I saw through predator sense was closer to purple. He's on the brink of a transformation. I don't know why Od-grat is suddenly on the verge of this growth, but his attack remains incomplete. A true red Gagon starflame would be unstoppable, but not yet. I halted my advance towards him and began preparing a psychic breath. I have to push back with maximum firepower. I needed to channel the full effect of the symbol of hunt and the energy I absorbed from Od-grat just moments ago. For the first time since the battle with the Imperial Mothership, my body reached its limit. I converted all my remaining energy into psychic power, leaving only the minimum necessary to keep myself intact. Perhaps because I was holding more psychic power than I should, my black scales and carapace began to emit a faint purple glow. The parts of my body that held the most energy, like the monster tentacles, glowed a vivid purple, brighter than any heat ray. Insignificant creature. Base judgment. The moment I fully charged my psychic power, Od-grat struck. The reddish-purple sphere elongated into a thin cylindrical shape and descended upon my head. My senses were so heightened that it seemed to move slowly, though it was actually as fast as light. Just before the deep violet ray could touch my body, I unleashed all my power into a psychic breath. The beam I fired collided with the starflame, creating a massive recoil that crushed down on me. Pain nullification activated. No. I can endure this. As I suspected, his attack was incomplete. A proper starflame would have overwhelmed me, reducing me to nothing. Thanks to the symbol effect, the thickness of my beam was on par with the starflame. In fact, His imperfect star flame was evenly matched with the psychic breath I was unleashing. I am a being blessed by the stars. I will never be defeated. Od-grat knew he wasn't overpowering me, so he kept pouring energy into the star flame. The output was nearly equal. The outcome would depend on who had more energy left. And in this moment, he held a slight advantage over me, even with the symbol of hunt. Grrr. The power struggle between us began to tilt in his favor. The intense heat from the star flame started to burn my head carapace. Even with the mimicry scales, my carapace was slowly melting. Just a little more. Od-grat's energy was dwindling, likely because this was his first time using dragon power. Despite the agony of my melting carapace and scales, I gritted my teeth and maintained focus. Then, in the spot where my scales had melted, I felt a strange sensation. It was like tiny creatures crawling over me, but oddly, it wasn't unpleasant. The feeling extended beyond my body, like fur blowing in the wind. What? And it wasn't just a sensation. Within the molten carapace, wriggling, worm-like entities began to proliferate. What is this? It was peculiar. Even amidst the pain from the struggle with Starflame, I was concerned about the changes happening in my body. These worm-like sensations weren't a natural growth or even physical matter. They were formed from incomprehensible energy, a mixture of psychic power and unknown energy. It was as if someone had refined chaos into delicate strands. Refining chaos. Could it be? As soon as I became aware of the transformation in my body, the worm-like entities began to coalesce. They merged from fine, hair-like strands into tendrils as large as my own assimilation tentacles. The newly formed tentacle cluster shot out with the speed of an arrow released from a bow. It surged towards Od-grat, who was now the target. As the tentacle attack approached, Od-grat must have read the future, because he quickly ceased the starflame. The energy that had been burning me vanished instantly, and my psychic breath blew off one of his legs. Despite his injury, Od-grat tried to dodge the incoming energy tendrils. He evaded most of them, but one energy tentacle pierced through his tail. The tentacles that had achieved their purpose dissolved into the air. Creak. For the first time, Od-grat screamed. Even though he had only lost a tail, the pain was so intense that he could not properly emit his psychic waves. No matter what, this is the chance. With my still healthy wings fluttering, I flew towards him. Od-grat, no longer in a state to maintain flight, began to slowly descend. You. The pain, hatred, and various resentments emanating from the black dragon seeped into me. As I closed the distance, an additional emotion appeared in his psychic waves. It was surely fear of death. What could the black tyrant be seeing right now? The sight of the amorph approaching with its mouth open. Or perhaps the future shown by the precognitive abilities that had assisted him until now. The great Od-grat will never be defeated. Od-grat's psychic waves failed to continue to the end. The headless black dragon's corpse disappeared beneath the clouds. Zzz, your future is over. With the sun at my back, I devoured Od-grat's head in one bite. Chapter 230. Predation effect activated. Successfully acquired the gene essence of Dragon's Heart, unique. Stolen the Dragon's Heart, unique from the biological traits of the Black Gagon. Would you like to apply Dragon's Heart, unique? As soon as I swallowed Od-grat's head, the long-awaited text box appeared. The Dragon's Heart, a symbol of the Black Gagon. This is the first unique trait acquired through direct predation without using the Transcendence system. If you want to evolve into a specialization in psychic abilities, it's the best option. Though I should be happy to have gained such a powerful trait, I felt a slight disappointment. I thought something different would come out since it's a special one. Perhaps a precognition ability, or the starflame it used before dying. Not that the Dragon's Heart is useless, but Od-grat was a being of a different caliber compared to ordinary Black Galagons. So I had a little hope. Well, it's a bit disappointing, but it can't be helped. I selected Confirm. Then several translucent text boxes appeared, and my body began to change. Imitation is another aspect of evolution. There is no being better suited to this concept than the amorph. My organs and bodily systems began actively accepting the gene essence of the Black Gagon, transforming in response. The blood vessels connected to the heart on the right side expanded, split, and branched into new vessels. These new vessels converged on the opposite side of the heart, towards the left. As organs like the lungs and intestines shifted, a new heart began to grow in the empty space left behind. Though smaller in size than the heart on the right, the strength of this Gagon heart was no less. So this is how it feels. Could it be because I'm in the symbol of hunt state that my senses are heightened? I could vividly feel the changes happening inside my body. With 2 hearts in an instant, I took a deep breath. Even when I secured the berserker synapse before, I felt a strong vitality, but this time, it was on a different level. Despite expending a considerable amount of energy in the fight with Od-grat, the exhaustion completely disappeared. Instead, I felt a powerful energy, as if I were holding the sun within me. With the dragon's heart, it's as if I'm always in the symbol of hunt state, at least concerning psychic abilities. The heart constantly pumps psychic power, allowing me to use techniques like psychic breath without restriction. And that's not all. Even in situations that consume large amounts of energy, like superluminal navigation, I can substitute with psychic power. It'll go well with the horizon of nightmares. The worry of energy consumption while towing the ship will decrease, after all. Come to think of it, this makes 4 unique traits now, doesn't it? I have 3 unique traits created through the Transcendence system. Adding the Dragon's Heart, which specializes in psychic abilities, brings the total to 4. Only 6 more until I meet the evolution conditions. I already met the apex condition while fighting Od-grat's group. Now, only the requirements of acquiring 10 unique traits and holding 6 types remain. I still have a long way to go. To gather 10 unique traits, I'll need to continue hunting Black Gagon class apexes or use the Transcendence system. It won't be easy to gain them through hunting. I might find more Black Galagons, but there's no sign of any new Gagon groups on this planet. And it seems there are no other apex creatures with unique level traits on this planet besides the Galagons. There's a chance the arcane orca might come, but waiting for that would be too inefficient. The arcane orca, a higher species of sky wool, moves between planets, consuming massive amounts of energy. They might come to the Black Mountain where the sky wolves roam, but it's impossible to predict when they'll arrive. At least the crystal wing has a nest, but the orca does not. Rather than waiting indefinitely, it might be better to consider other options. Perhaps it's time to leave. Thanks to the Galagons, I'm at the apex condition, and I killed the Black Gagon Od-grat. I've probably gotten everything I can from this planet. Though I don't plan to leave immediately. After capturing the Hellside Hornet, I gained new information about the materials needed for a new unique trait. To fuse that unique trait, I'll need the traits of both the Hellside Hornet and the Glacier Fiend. Even though Hellside Hornets are one thing, finding Glacier Fiends on another planet won't be easy. I need to either fuse a unique trait on this planet before leaving or at least gather the materials. Not to mention, there are still unresolved issues with the screechers that came with PS-111 and the gene obtained from the human-faced insects. It'll take quite some time to check everything. I'll think about that later. The battle is still raging below. Before descending, I checked my body's condition one last time. The scales that were burned by the impact of the star flame were almost completely restored. Although the head carapace, which took the most damage, is still healing, I don't need to worry since it can be repaired by absorbing more enemies. That attack just now, it was definitely the effect of the psychic reflection armor. Not just any ordinary psychic reflection armor, but one imbued with the abyssal hue. A bizarre sensation, as if chaos itself had been refined, and it inflicted extreme pain on the opponent it struck. No trait other than the abyssal hue possesses such characteristics. Was it automatically activated because it's a passive trait? I can't deactivate or activate the psychic reflection armor at will. It seems that the same characteristic is reflected in the abyssal hue version. There are probably 2 conditions for activation. Some traits of the amorph do not stack or combine with others. In such cases, the more superior trait takes effect, while the less effective trait remains inactive. For example, if I possess the enhanced wings of the beast and acquire a wing trait, it doesn't mean I get additional wings. The gene essence of the wing trait is stored somewhere in my brain but doesn't actually change my body. For the wing trait to activate, the enhanced wings of the beast must be deactivated. This could happen if I lose my winged arms or if the trait itself is lost. Similarly, the psychic reflection armor is inactive due to the high psychic resistance provided by the mimicry scales. If the psychic resistance effect of the mimicry scales is terminated, the psychic reflection armor will reactivate. But the mimicry scales were severely damaged by the starflame. The scales and carapace were stripped away, exposing the underlying muscles, causing the mimicry scales effect to be lost. As a result, the psychic reflection armor was temporarily triggered. Of course, I've been hit by several psychic breaths while the mimicry scales were inactive, but the armor didn't activate then. This suggests that another condition is required for activation. The amount of psychic power must reach a certain threshold before it automatically activates. The regular psychic reflection armor reflects any amount of psychic power, no matter how small. On the other hand, the Abyssal Hue version seems to activate automatically only when I suffer a truly devastating attack that could cause serious harm. The downside is that I can't activate it at will, but it's still useful to deliver a powerful blow to psychic-heavy enemies like cult players or Galagons. I'll research it further if I get the chance. After completing all checks, I folded my wings and accelerated toward the space beneath the clouds. The battle with the Galagons is now over. After the Great Elder left, she couldn't move for a long time. When he mentioned leaving, it brought back memories of being abandoned by her old pack. By the time she regained her senses, her mother was beside her. Despite her own injuries not being fully healed, her mother was covering her with her wings, making her embrace uncomfortable. She looked up at her mother, but her mother didn't meet her gaze. She was just covering her with her wings, telling her not to feel cold. The emotions she felt at that moment were complex. She wanted to shout, "What are you doing now? How will you take responsibility for the Great Elder leaving because of you?" But in the end, she couldn't bring herself to say it. Because her mother's wings were so warm, like a mother comforting her child. With her keen memory, she recalled something from long ago. She was born with a weak body and often shivered in the cold, even in the nest. Whenever that happened, her mother would spread her wings and hold her warmly. Though her mother's eyes were indifferent and cold, her wings were always so comforting. Perhaps it was because she was reminiscing about the past, or maybe it was because she had grown and broadened her thinking. She suddenly wondered if the Great Elder had really left her pack. As they departed for her homeland, the Great Elder spoke. The Great Elder had always said she was the most precious to him. He promised never to abandon her, and that promise was kept. Moreover, right before leaving, hadn't he said so? He never lies to her. No matter how many times she thought back, he had never once lied to her. She pondered. Perhaps the Great Elder had a plan all along. He always came up with plans she had never seen or thought of before. Maybe, even now, he had a grand plan that only he knew about. And this thought was not hers alone. I found it. The Great Elder left this behind. The little elder, who had been with the Great Elder the longest, pulled something out of a pit. It was a long, metallic object, unlike anything their kind used, with an energy that was different from theirs. The Great Elder had often lent this item to his unsightly friend. When she saw it, she realized. This was the trace the Great Elder had left behind. The Great Elder hadn't abandoned them. He left, trusting them with his plan. After that, everyone began searching for more traces left by the Great Elder. They revisited the places they had gone with him. The vast icy plains, the black mountain where they had fought the sky serpent, even the cave midway up the mountain where she had hunted with him. All of it was in vain, but she and her kin didn't give up. They were certain the Great Elder was waiting for them to come. After searching for a long time, the last place left was one she had never visited. The little elder said it was where they went to catch the shiny, flying thing. And that place was the answer. At that place, the Great Elder and the mighty Od-grat were engaged in a battle that the sky and stars would remember. As she flew, carrying the little elder, she vowed to scold the Great Elder when she met him. He had no idea how shocked she was when the one she revered and loved the most said he was leaving. If she stabbed him a few times with her horn, maybe he wouldn't do such a thing again. Seeing the injured Great Elder fighting Od-grat nearly softened her anger, but she forced herself to stay resolute. Though she downgraded her plan to scratching him with her claws instead of stabbing him, her resolve to reprimand him remained unchanged. With the desire to scold the Great Elder firmly in her heart, she kept fighting. Besides the White Elder she killed in the initial ambush, the remaining two were surprisingly difficult. After one elder died, the others kept their distance, evading her while waiting for Od-grat to defeat the Great Elder and come to their aid. Foolish. The Great Elder is far superior to the deceitful Od-grat. Those dumb elders are clinging to false hope, unable to see the truth. At that moment, the light of the stars flashed above her head from within the clouds. A familiar wave of power shook the clouds several times before expelling something. Traitor. Blackkin. Dead. Mighty Od-grat. Victorious. The fall happened so quickly that she couldn't fully confirm it. Her opponents, too, seemed confused, and their companions mocked her. but she knew instinctively who the true victor was. Of course, her thoughts were correct. A black meteor fell upon the companion who had mocked her. As the star shifted and a shadow swallowed the nest, the black star engulfed the white elder. Impossible. Impossible. The so-called black kin they shouted about lifted its head and looked at her. Meeting her gaze, it nodded and immediately flew to her side. Zzzzzzzzzzzzz. Let's wrap this up quickly and go back. Yes. His calm demeanor was incredibly infuriating, but she couldn't say a word. Even that demeanor seemed endearing to her.